The cowboys laughed when they saw the poor boy trying to tame the most aggressive horse at the auction. But when the animal lowered its head before him, no one could understand why. Dawn broke over Willow Creek, Montana, painting the distant mountains with strokes of amber and gold. Joey Martinez watched the spectacle in silence from the small makeshift room at the back of his uncle's stable. His worn sleeping bag was still warm, but the 14-year-old had already been awake for 20 minutes, observing how the light transformed the landscape outside his single window. 3 years had passed since the accident at the Mexican border. 3 years since he'd heard his mother's laughter or felt his father's hand ruffling his hair. Sometimes, in the space between sleep and waking, Joey could almost believe they were still alive, waiting for him in the kitchen of their small apartment in Albuquerque. But reality always crashed back with the first light of dawn. Joey pulled on his faded jeans and the flannel shirt that had once belonged to his father. It hung loose on his thin frame, but he refused to let his uncle buy him a new one. Slipping his feet into worn boots, he stepped out into the crisp morning air, his breath creating small clouds that dissipated in the growing light. The horses in the stable stirred at his approach. Joey moved silently between the stalls, checking water troughs and refilling them where necessary. At the end of the row, a young chestnut colt snorted nervously, backing away from the stall door. "Tranquilo, pequeño," Joey whispered, his voice a soft blend of English and Spanish that emerged whenever he was alone with the animals. "It's just me. No hay problema." The colt's ears flicked forward, recognizing Joey's voice. The boy reached into his pocket and pulled out a small apple slice, holding it flat on his palm. Slowly the young horse approached, nostrils flaring as he caught the sweet scent. Joey remained perfectly still as the colt's soft muzzle tickled his palm, taking the treat with gentle precision. "See? We understand each other," Joey murmured, stroking the colt's neck. "Mi abuela would say you have an old soul in those eyes." By the time Joey finished his morning chores, the sun had fully risen. He made his way to the main house where his uncle Miguel was already at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in one hand and the ranch's financial ledger in the other. Deep wrinkles framed his eyes that had aged a decade in the 3 years since his wife's passing. "Morning," Miguel said without looking up. "There's eggs on the stove." Joey served himself a small portion and sat across from his uncle. The silence between them wasn't hostile, but it was vast. A canyon neither knew how to bridge. Miguel Martinez was a good man, hard-working and honest, who had taken in his brother's son without hesitation. But grief had hollowed him out, leaving little emotional energy for the quiet boy who moved like a shadow through his home. "School today?" Miguel asked, the same question he posed every morning. "Yes, sir," Joey replied, the same answer he gave every day. Miguel nodded, returning to his ledger. "Farrier's coming this afternoon. Make sure you're back to help." Joey washed his plate, grabbed his backpack, and headed out to where his battered bicycle leaned against the porch. The ride to Willow Creek High School took 20 minutes along dusty roads that wound between ranches and open fields. Joey pedaled steadily, losing himself in the rhythm, letting his mind drift to the horses he'd seen on the ridge yesterday, wild Mustangs that still roamed free in some of Montana's more remote areas. The school parking lot was filling with trucks and cars when Joey arrived. He locked his bike to the rack and kept his head down as he walked toward the entrance, his strategy for moving through the hallways unnoticed. "Hey, border boy, jumped any fences today?" The strategy rarely worked. Tyler Peterson and his friends lounged by the main doors, the same position they occupied every morning like territorial wolves. Tyler, the vice sheriff's son, wore his father's authority like an invisible badge that granted him immunity for his cruelty. Joey kept walking, eyes fixed on the worn linoleum floor. "I'm talking to you, Martinez." Tyler stepped into his path. "My dad says they caught another group trying to cross near Tucson last week. Any relatives of yours?" Joey's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. His citizenship had never been in question. He had been born in New Mexico. But that distinction meant nothing to Tyler and his friends. To them, his brown skin and Spanish surname were enough to mark him as perpetually foreign. "Nothing to say?" Tyler's voice dripped with mock concern. Maybe English isn't your first language? His friend snickered. Joey sidestepped and continued walking, his shoulders tight with tension that wouldn't release until he reached Ms. Richardson's biology classroom, the one place in school where he felt something close to belonging. Ms. Richardson was arranging specimens on the lab tables when Joey entered. She looked up and smiled, the corners of her eyes crinkling behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Good morning, Joey. You're early again." "Morning, Ms. Richardson." He set his backpack down at his usual spot in the front row. "Can I help with anything?" "Actually, yes." She gestured to a cardboard box on her desk. "Dr. Johnson dropped these off this morning. Specimens from a young deer they found injured near Harper Creek. Would you mind setting them up for the ecology unit next week?" Joey nodded and carefully opened the box. Inside were plaster casts of deer tracks, a preserved piece of hide showing a distinctive scar pattern, and photographs documenting the animal's rescue and rehabilitation. As he arranged the items, Ms. Richardson watched him with thoughtful eyes. "Dr. Johnson mentioned the deer's behavior was unusual when they found it," she said. "Most injured deer bolt when humans approach, but this one seemed to understand they were trying to help." Joey examined one of the photographs showing the young deer looking directly at the camera, its large eyes reflecting an almost human awareness. "It's not that unusual," he said quietly. "When deer are really hurt and know they can't escape, they sometimes go still instead of running. It's not about trust. It's a different kind of fear response. See how its ears are positioned in this picture? It's still terrified, but it's conserving energy." Ms. Richardson leaned closer, studying the image. "You're absolutely right. How did you know that?" Joey shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "My grandfather used to track deer in Chihuahua. He taught me about animal behavior before he died." The classroom began to fill with other students, and Joey retreated to his desk, the moment of animation fading as he resumed his habitual silence. But Ms. Richardson had noticed, just as she always did. Later that day, as Joey was leaving school, he overheard Ms. Richardson talking with Dr. Johnson, who had stopped by to collect her specimens. "He has a gift, Lily," Ms. Richardson was saying. "The way he explained that deer's defensive behavior was remarkable. It's like he speaks their language." "Interesting," Dr. Johnson replied, a tall woman with auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "We're always looking for volunteers at the clinic. Do you think he'd be interested?" "I'm not sure. He keeps to himself, but it might be good for him. Give him somewhere to belong." Joey didn't wait to hear more. He slipped away, mounted his bicycle, and pedaled hard, but instead of heading directly back to his uncle's ranch, he turned onto a narrow dirt path that wound up into the hills overlooking Willow Creek. At the top of a grassy rise, Joey left his bike and walked the rest of the way to a flat outcropping of rock. Lying on his stomach, he pulled a pair of battered binoculars from his backpack and focused on the valley below. In the distance, partially hidden by a stand of aspen trees, a small herd of wild horses grazed in the afternoon light. Joey watched them for over an hour, noting how the lead mare positioned herself between the herd and a perceived threat, how the yearlings played but never strayed too far, how the single stallion patrolled the perimeter with watchful vigilance. Every ear twitch, every tail flick, every subtle shift in the herd's formation told a story Joey could read as clearly as words on a page. "Abuelo said horses carry old souls," he whispered to himself, remembering the stories his grandfather told during long summer evenings in Mexico. He said sometimes the spirits of ancestors return as horses to guide the living. The sun was beginning to set when Joey finally headed back to his uncle's ranch, the memory of the wild horses sustaining him like invisible companions. The next 2 weeks passed in their usual rhythm until the annual Willow Creek horse auction transformed the sleepy town into a bustling hub of activity. Ranchers and buyers from 3 states converged on the fairgrounds, bringing trailers full of horses to sell and empty trailers ready to take new purchases home. Uncle Miguel had volunteered their services to help manage the temporary stables, which meant Joey spent the entire weekend hauling water buckets and hay bales, checking on nervous horses in unfamiliar surroundings. Despite the exhaustion, Joey loved being surrounded by so many different horses, even if the commercial atmosphere troubled him deeply. On Sunday afternoon, the main event began, the auction of prime stock in the central arena. Joey was sweeping a corner near the back when a commotion drew his attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourselves for something extraordinary." The booming voice of Blake Thompson echoed through the building. Thompson was Willow Creek's version of royalty, owner of the largest ranch in the county with custom crocodile boots, a massive silver belt buckle, and an arrogance that came from both his wealth and his political connections. "This is Black Thunder, captured in the Wyoming mountains, a pure wild Mustang, a specimen like few have ever seen." A hush fell over the crowd as two cowboys led an enormous black horse into the arena. The animal was magnificent, powerful musculature, arched neck, and a mane that seemed to capture and reflect light. But what struck Joey most were its eyes, fierce, vigilant, filled with a contained fury that made spectators instinctively step back. "This animal has injured 3 of my best handlers," Thompson boasted, as if this increased the horse's value. "They say his herd was decimated by illegal hunters, and he was the sole survivor. A true indomitable spirit." Joey stopped sweeping, his attention completely captured by the Mustang. The horse wasn't furious. It was terrified. Every violent movement wasn't aggression but pure fear. Joey noticed the small scars on its legs, signs it had been captured with traps. He saw how the animal constantly looked toward the exits, how its nostrils flared at the smell of human sweat. "We'll start the bidding at $5,000. Who'll give more for the true spirit of the Wild West?" As the bids climbed, Joey left his broom leaning against the wall and moved closer to the arena. Something pulled him toward this terrified animal like an invisible thread. "Hey kid, get away from the fence," shouted one of Thompson's assistants. But Joey continued forward, as if in a trance. The black Mustang, which had been whinnying and rearing furiously, suddenly stopped. Its ears, previously flattened against its head, moved slightly forward. The still dilated nostrils flared as they caught the boy's scent. "Yo entiendo," Joey whispered in Spanish. "I understand." For a moment that seemed impossible to believe. The immense horse fixed its gaze directly on the boy's eyes. A strange silence fell over the arena. And then, what no one expected, the black Mustang slightly lowered its head in a gesture almost imperceptible to most, but which made Joey's heart race. "Get that Mexican kid out of there." Thompson's voice broke the moment. "Continuing the auction, I have 7,000. Who'll give 8? But something had changed. Joey knew it. And somehow, mysteriously, the horse knew it too. "Sold for $12,000 to Blake Thompson himself," announced the auctioneer when no one else dared to compete for the dangerous animal. At the end of the day, while helping dismantle the temporary stalls, Joey overheard fragments of conversation between Thompson's cowboys. "Going to try breaking it for the state rodeo. Already bet Jenkins he can do it in less than a month. If he can't, he'll send it to slaughter, says he doesn't feed useless mouths at the ranch." That night, Joey couldn't sleep. The image of the black Mustang's eyes haunted him. He had recognized something in that gaze, the same terror, the same loneliness, the same pain of not belonging that he himself felt every day. Before dawn, Joey had made his decision. Joey was out of bed before his alarm could ring at 4:30 in the morning. His decision crystallized into action as he pulled on his worn jeans and his father's old denim jacket. The pre-dawn air bit through the fabric as he quietly slipped out of his room at the back of the stable, careful not to wake the horses, or worse, his Uncle Miguel. His battered mountain bike leaned against the wall where he'd left it. Joey ran his hand over the frame, wondering if it would survive the daily journey he was planning. 8 miles to the Thompson Ranch was no small distance on these rural Montana roads, especially in the dark. "We can do this," he whispered to the bike as he wheeled it away from the stable, only mounting once he was far enough that the crunch of gravel wouldn't be heard. The world was different at this hour, a landscape of shadows and whispers. Joey's breath clouded before him as he pedaled steadily, the beam of his small flashlight carving a narrow path through the darkness. The stars hung impossibly close overhead, a canopy of silver against the deepest blue-black. In the distance, coyotes called to one another, their voices rising and falling like questions without answers. Joey knew he was taking a risk. Trespassing on Blake Thompson's property could have serious consequences, especially for someone like him. The word deportation floated through his mind, though he knew it was technically impossible. He was an American citizen. But in Willow Creek, technicalities often mattered less than perception. The sky was beginning to lighten to a deep indigo when Joey reached the back boundary of the Thompson Ranch. He hid his bike in a thicket of scrub juniper and continued on foot, moving along the fence line until he found what he was looking for. A section where the barbed wire sagged slightly between posts. Slipping through with practiced ease that came from years of navigating fences in his grandfather's ranch in Mexico, Joey entered Thompson territory. He knew the layout of the ranch from helping at various brandings and cattle drives over the years. The main house and barns were on the eastern side, but isolated paddocks for new or troublesome horses were kept on the western edge, away from the valuable breeding stock. Following his instincts, Joey moved silently through the awakening landscape. Morning birds had begun their chorus, providing cover for the soft crunch of his footsteps on the frost-hardened ground. As he crested a small rise, he saw it, a solitary corral set apart from all others, and inside, a dark shape moving restlessly back and forth. The black Mustang paced the perimeter of his prison, his movements speaking of barely contained energy and profound anxiety. Even from 50 yards away, Joey could see the animal was hyper-alert, ears swiveling to catch every sound, nostrils flaring to process every scent, muscles tense and ready to flee from dangers it couldn't escape. Joey chose a spot about 15 yards from the corral, settling behind a large rock that offered both concealment from the ranch buildings and a clear view of the Mustang. From his backpack, he pulled out a battered notebook and a pencil stub. For the first hour, Joey simply observed, making notes about the horse's patterns of movement, its reactions to various sounds, the way it held its body. The Mustang continued its restless circuit, occasionally stopping to stare off into the distance as if remembering something or someone far away. "You're looking for your herd," Joey said softly, speaking for the first time. "I understand that feeling." The Mustang's ears immediately swiveled toward the sound of his voice, its entire body tensing. Joey remained perfectly still, continuing to speak in a low, gentle tone. "So vim te fazer companhia," he said, slipping into the blend of English and Spanish that felt most natural when he was nervous. "You don't have to do anything. No tienes que hacer nada." The horse snorted, pawing at the ground, but Joey noted how its eyes remained fixed on him, not in challenge, but in assessment. This wasn't the blind fear or aggression that the cowboys had described. This was calculation, intelligence, caution. As the sun climbed higher, Joey knew he needed to leave soon to make it to school on time. He stood slowly, keeping his movements smooth and predictable. "I'll come back tomorrow," he promised the Mustang, who watched him intently until he disappeared over the rise. Joey repeated this routine the next morning and the next. On the third day, he brought an apple he'd saved from his school lunch, carefully cutting it into small pieces. He placed them on the ground about 10 feet from the corral fence, then retreated to his usual observation spot. "They're for you," he told the Mustang. "No tricks." For hours, the horse ignored the offering, though Joey noticed how it would occasionally stop its pacing to look at the apple pieces, nostrils flaring to catch their sweet scent. Joey was about to give up and retrieve the untouched food when the Mustang finally approached the fence. With exquisite caution, the black horse stretched its neck, sniffing thoroughly before its lips finally, delicately, gathered a piece of apple. Joey felt his heart swell as the horse ate the treat, then cautiously returned for another piece. "Minha abuela dizia que cavalos carregam almas antigas," Joey murmured, watching the Mustang's wary eyes. "My grandmother said horses carry ancient souls. She said some have known so much pain that they need to find someone who understands their language to trust again." Each morning, Joey arrived before dawn and departed just in time to race to school. He gradually moved his observation spot closer to the corral, always announcing his movements before making them. He brought his school books and read aloud from them: history of the American West, poems about the Great Plains, scientific texts about equine behavior that he'd checked out from the library. "Listen to this," he said one morning, about 2 weeks into his secret visits. "Mustangs are descendants of horses brought by Spanish conquistadors. They are living history, genetic memories of both freedom and conquest." That's like us, isn't it? We carry histories we didn't choose. The Mustang had stopped seeing Joey as a threat around the 10th day. Now it would often stand at the fence nearest to where the boy sat, its ears forward in what Joey recognized as curiosity rather than alarm. Still, any sudden movement would send it retreating to the far side of the corral. Trust was building, but it remained fragile. Joey had been researching extensively, reading everything he could find about traumatized horses and gentle training methods. He discovered the work of Monty Roberts and other trainers who advocated understanding the natural psychology of horses rather than breaking their spirit. These techniques resonated deeply with Joey, confirming what he had always instinctively felt about working with animals. It was on the 15th morning when Joey's routine was interrupted. He was sitting closer than ever to the corral, softly reading from a book about prairie ecosystems, when a gruff voice broke the peaceful scene. "Hey, what do you think you're doing here?" Joey jumped to his feet, his heart hammering. A weathered cowboy in his 60s was approaching, his face set in a frown beneath a battered Stetson. Joey recognized him as Frank, one of Thompson's longest-serving hands. I'm just watching," Joey stammered, wondering if he could outrun the older man if necessary. Frank looked from Joey to the Mustang, his eyebrows rising in surprise. The horse, rather than bolting to the far side of the corral as it did with other humans, remained where it was, watching the interaction with alert, but not panicked attention. "Well, I'll be damned," Frank muttered. "This devil nearly took my arm off last week." He pulled up his sleeve to reveal a bandage wrapped around his forearm. "Thompson says he's got 2 more weeks to break him, or he's shipping him to the slaughterhouse in Billings." Joey's stomach lurched at the thought. "Please don't tell him I've been coming here," he pleaded. "I'm not doing any harm." Frank scratched his grizzled beard thoughtfully, studying Joey with narrowed eyes. "You're Miguel's nephew, aren't you? The Mexican kid." There was curiosity in his voice, not hostility. "I saw what happened at the auction. That horse looked at you different." Joey nodded cautiously. "I think he's just scared, not mean. He needs time to understand we're not going to hurt him." "Time," Frank echoed with a dry laugh. "That's not something Blake Thompson has much patience for. He sees horses as investments, not partners." To Joey's surprise, Frank didn't order him off the property or threaten to report him. Instead, the old cowboy took another long look at the Mustang, who was still watching them with unusual calm. "Thompson won't be around till Thursday. He's at a cattlemen's convention in Bozeman," Frank said finally. "Just be gone before the day crew arrives at 7, and don't let anyone else catch you." The next morning, Joey arrived at his usual time to find a wooden stool placed near the corral and a fresh apple sitting on top of it. Frank was nowhere to be seen, but the message was clear. He had an ally. Over the next days, Frank would occasionally appear, always keeping his distance, watching the interaction between boy and horse with quiet fascination. He never stayed long and rarely spoke, but his silent approval encouraged Joey to continue. By the end of the second week, Joey had progressed to sitting just 3 feet from the fence. The Mustang would now approach voluntarily, accepting apple slices directly from Joey's outstretched palm. It was still cautious. The slightest unexpected movement would send it skittering away. But it would always return, its curiosity seemingly stronger than its fear. "I think he needs a better name than Black Devil," Joey told Frank one morning as the old cowboy delivered a fresh apple. "Something that sees who he really is, not just how scared he's been." Frank leaned against the fence post, keeping a respectful distance from the horse. "What would you call him then?" Joey watched as the Mustang gracefully moved across the corral, power contained in every step despite its confinement. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "But I'll figure it out. Names are important. My abuelo said they can shape a destiny." On the 16th day, Joey arrived to find the Mustang unusually agitated. It paced frantically, occasionally rearing up against the corral fence, its eyes wild with a fear greater than Joey had seen before. "What happened?" Joey asked when Frank appeared silently beside him. "New ranch hand tried to go in there yesterday evening," Frank explained grimly. "Thompson's orders, said the horse was getting too comfortable and needed to be reminded who's boss. Went in with a whip." He gestured to a torn piece of fabric hanging from the fence. "Horse nearly took his head off, lucky to escape with just a broken wrist." Joey's heart sank. Weeks of patient trust building, damaged in moments of human arrogance. But as he sat in his usual spot, speaking softly in a mix of English and Spanish, he noticed something remarkable. Though the Mustang continued to pace nervously, it would pause whenever it passed near Joey, as if drawing some comfort from his presence. "It's okay," Joey soothed. "I'm still here. No te voy a abandonar. I won't abandon you." By the third week, Joey could sit right beside the fence without causing the Mustang any distress. The horse would often stand near him, sometimes so close that Joey could feel its warm breath on his face through the fence slats. Frank had taken to leaving a curry brush along with the daily apple, and Joey would extend it through the fence, gently brushing the Mustang's neck when it allowed, always letting the horse determine how much contact it could tolerate. It was during one of these quiet morning sessions, with the sun just beginning to illuminate the mountains to the east, that Joey heard the sound of an approaching vehicle. A cloud of dust rose from the access road, and the distinctive rumble of Blake Thompson's custom pickup truck broke the morning stillness. The Mustang immediately tensed, backing away from the fence as Joey quickly gathered his things. But it was too late to escape unseen. The truck pulled up beside the corral, and Blake Thompson stepped out, his expression darkening as he recognized the boy. "What the hell is going on here?" Thompson's voice boomed across the space, causing the Mustang to retreat to the furthest corner of the corral, ears pinned back in fear. Thompson advanced furiously toward Joey. "Who authorized you to be on my property?" Blake Thompson's face flushed red with anger as he towered over Joey, his custom snakeskin boots planted firmly in the Montana dirt, fists clenched at his sides. Joey felt his mouth go dry, words evaporating before they could form. "Mr. Thompson, I know exactly who you are." Thompson's voice cut through the morning air like a bullwhip. He grabbed Joey's arm roughly, his fingers digging into the boy's flesh. "You're the immigrant nephew of Martinez, the one who caused a scene at my auction." Behind them, the black Mustang paced nervously, eyes fixed on the confrontation, nostrils flaring with each agitated breath. Joey could sense the horse's fear mirroring his own, both trapped, both at the mercy of a man who saw them as nothing more than problems to be solved or discarded. "The horse is traumatized," Joey said, finding his voice despite the pounding of his heart. "He needs time and patience, not force." Thompson's laugh was sharp and humorless, his grip tightening on Joey's arm. "Time? Patience? This isn't an animal shelter, kid. This is a business." He gestured toward the Mustang with his free hand. "That animal cost me $12,000. It'll make me $30,000 once it's broken for the rodeo circuit. But if you just give him a chance—" "Enough!" Thompson released Joey's arm with a small shove. "This is private property. Get out before I call the sheriff." His eyes narrowed. "And I'm sure the last thing your family wants is official attention on their status." Joey flinched at the implied threat. Though his own citizenship was secure, he knew his uncle's situation was more complicated. Thompson was playing a card that many in Willow Creek wielded against Latino families, the specter of immigration authorities that could tear apart lives with a single phone call. As Joey gathered his backpack, the Mustang approached the fence, watching intently. Thompson noticed the interaction and scowled. "Frank!" he bellowed toward the barn. The old cowboy emerged, hat in hand. "Did you know about this?" Frank's weathered face remained impassive. "Boys got away with horses." "I don't pay you to let trespassers play with my investments," Thompson snapped. "Make sure he doesn't come back, and get Rodriguez to start working this horse hard tomorrow. I want it ready for the rodeo buyers in 3 weeks." Joey's heart sank as he walked away. At the edge of the property, he turned for one last look. The Mustang still stood at the fence, watching him leave. In that moment, Joey made a decision. He couldn't abandon the horse to a fate of brutality or slaughter. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Willow Creek's main street as Joey pedaled his bike toward the small veterinary clinic on the edge of town. The weathered sign reading Johnson Veterinary Services creaked slightly in the breeze. Joey hesitated at the door, his courage wavering, before finally pushing it open. The bell above jingled cheerfully. Dr. Lily Johnson looked up from her computer, pushing a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. Recognition flickered across her face. "Joey Martinez, right? Ms. Richardson's student?" Joey nodded, shifting his weight nervously from one foot to the other. "I need your help, Dr. Johnson. It's about a horse." Lily gestured to a chair across from her desk. As Joey explained the situation, the Mustang, Thompson's methods, the looming deadline, her expression grew increasingly concerned. "Joey, you're asking me to go against the most powerful man in the county," she said when he finished. "Blake Thompson has sued 3 people for lesser offenses. He won all the cases." "But the horse will die if nobody does anything," Joey pleaded, leaning forward in his chair. "He's not violent, just terrified. You should see how he responds when he's not being threatened." Lily removed her glasses, massaging the bridge of her nose. Joey noticed the deep circles under her eyes. He'd heard that Dr. Johnson had moved to Willow Creek 5 years ago from Seattle and never quite fit into the conservative small town. Like him, she existed on the periphery. "Even if I wanted to help, what could I do? Thompson owns the horse legally." Joey thought quickly. "Could you inspect the ranch for something official like animal health regulations?" A faint smile crossed Lily's face. "That's actually not a bad idea. I am the county's designated large animal veterinarian." She tapped her pen thoughtfully against the desk. "I could schedule a routine inspection. But Joey, I need to understand what you're seeing that no one else is." "Just come watch," Joey said simply. "I can show you." The next morning dawned clear and cold. Joey huddled in the passenger seat of Lily's battered pickup truck as they approached the Thompson Ranch. She had called ahead, citing a county-mandated inspection of all boarding facilities following a case of equine influenza in a neighboring county. Frank met them at the gate, his expression carefully neutral as his eyes met Joey's. He led them through the ranch, with Lily making notes on her clipboard about various facilities until they reached the isolated corral where the Black Mustang was kept. "I need to inspect all equine boarding areas," Lily explained to Frank. "Even the isolation paddocks." Frank nodded. "Take your time, Doc. I need to check on the hay delivery. Be back in 20 minutes. He walked away, deliberately unhurried, leaving them alone with the Mustang. The black horse stood tense in the center of the corral, ears forward, watching them warily. "He's usually calmer by now," Joey whispered. "Thompson had someone working him yesterday." "I can see the signs," Lily murmured, pointing to fresh whip marks on the horse's flank. Classic aggressive braking techniques, completely outdated and cruel. Joey approached the fence slowly, speaking softly in his blend of English and Spanish. The Mustang's ears flicked toward the sound of his voice, recognition evident in its posture. "Hey there, it's just me," Joey called gently. "Estoy aquí. I've brought a friend." To Lily's astonishment, the horse that was described in Thompson's records as extremely aggressive and dangerous began to walk cautiously toward Joey. The boy reached into his pocket and produced a small apple, holding it flat on his palm. After a moment's hesitation, the massive animal approached and delicately took the offering. "My God," Lily whispered. "In 15 years of veterinary medicine, I've never seen anything like this." "It's not magic," Joey explained, never taking his eyes from the Mustang. "It's just respect. He needs to know I won't hurt him." For the next 15 minutes, Lily documented the interaction, taking notes and discreetly filming with her phone as Joey worked with the horse. The Mustang allowed Joey to touch its neck briefly, still with moments of nervousness, but without the panic described in Thompson's reports. "Joey, what you're doing is extraordinary," Lily said as they drove away from the ranch. "This horse has clearly suffered severe trauma. Traditional methods would attempt to break him by force, which would only reinforce his fear and aggression. You're doing something completely different. Do you think we can help him?" Joey asked, hope edging into his voice for the first time. Lily's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I don't know, but I'm willing to try." Over the next week, Lily arranged more visits to the ranch under various professional pretexts. She began quietly building a network of supporters, carefully selecting people she thought might help. The first was Robert Wilson, pastor of the Methodist Church, known for his environmental activism and progressive views, unusual in conservative Willow Creek. "What we're witnessing is a rare gift," Lily explained to Pastor Wilson as they observed from a discreet distance while Joey worked with the Mustang. "This horse suffered a trauma that would have made most people write him off as dangerous. Joey sees beyond that." Pastor Wilson watched thoughtfully as the boy gently stroked the horse's muzzle through the fence slats, speaking in a soft mixture of English and Spanish. "There's a sermon in this somewhere," he said with a small smile. "Something about the last being first, and the wisdom of children." His expression grew serious. "Thompson attends my church, you know. He's a proud man, but not an evil one. Perhaps there's a way to appeal to his better nature." Lily's next recruit was Eleanor Braddock, the high school principal, who had been fighting for years to improve educational opportunities for Willow Creek's Latino students. "The boy has a natural gift for animal behavior," Lily told her as they watched Joey patiently working with the increasingly responsive horse. "But he needs advocates who understand his potential." Principal Braddock nodded slowly. "Our school system has failed this child. I see that now." She pulled out her phone and began making notes. "I'll speak with the school board about establishing a specialized program. Perhaps we can create an internship with your clinic, Dr. Johnson." Day by day, the small coalition grew. Jack Reed, editor of the Willow Creek Weekly, came to witness Joey's work after hearing rumors around town. A retired professor of equine studies from Montana State happened to be visiting his daughter in town and was brought to observe. Even Frank, Thompson's loyal ranch hand, began subtly spreading word among the other cowboys about what he was witnessing. Throughout this time, Joey continued his daily visits, unaware of the growing support network forming around him. His focus remained entirely on the Mustang, which he had privately begun calling Esperanza, hope, though he told no one about the name. "Yo también perdí mi familia," Joey whispered one morning as he brushed the horse's mane through the fence. "I know what it's like to lose everything and be alone in a strange place too." The Mustang stood perfectly still, one ear flicked back toward Joey, the other forward, listening both to the boy and to the wider world around them. Joey had learned to read these subtle signals. The horse was calm but vigilant, trusting but not completely surrendered. It was a negotiated peace between two wounded souls. As Joey talked, memories of his parents surfaced. His mother's laugh as she danced in their small kitchen, his father's strong hands teaching him to repair a bicycle chain. For the first time since the accident, these memories brought a bittersweet warmth rather than just pain. Something about the patient presence of the horse made it possible to remember without being overwhelmed. Lily documented each small breakthrough, the first time the Mustang accepted touch without flinching, the moment it began to approach Joey before being called, the day it nickered softly in greeting when the boy appeared. She compiled these observations with scientific precision, building a case file that grew thicker each day. "What you're witnessing is the formation of a cross-species bond based on mutual trauma recovery," she explained to Pastor Wilson and Principal Braddock during one observation session. "Both Joey and this horse have experienced profound loss and displacement. They're quite literally healing each other." On Sunday morning, Joey arrived at the ranch to find it unusually quiet. Most of Thompson's employees attended church services, leaving the property nearly deserted. Frank had left the gate unlocked with a note, "Thompson in Bozeman until evening. Be careful." Joey stood before the corral gate, heart pounding. He had never entered the enclosure before. always working with Esperanza through the fence. But their time was running short. Frank had warned him that Thompson was growing impatient with the lack of progress in traditional braking methods. "It's now or never," Joey whispered to himself as he unlatched the gate and stepped inside. The Mustang backed away several steps but didn't bolt or show aggression. Joey stood perfectly still, breathing deeply, letting the horse assess the new situation. "It's okay," he murmured, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "We're in this together. We're broken souls, you and me." For several minutes, they remained motionless, simply looking at each other. Then, summoning all his courage, Joey extended his hand and took a single step forward. Another step. Another. Until he stood within arm's reach of the magnificent animal that had been labeled too dangerous to approach. "Trust me," Joey whispered, tears streaming down his face as he extended his hand, palm up. The Mustang lowered its head slightly, nostrils flaring as it took in Joey's scent. Then, in a movement that seemed to defy everything everyone had said about this demon horse, it touched its muzzle to Joey's palm. Tears flowed freely down Joey's cheeks as he whispered words of comfort in Spanish, phrases his grandmother had used to calm him when he had nightmares. The Mustang remained still, accepting his touch, its breathing synchronizing with the boy's. What happened next left Joey breathless. The enormous black Mustang lowered its head further and, in a movement that seemed almost impossible for such a fierce animal, bent its front legs and knelt completely before him. It was a gesture of submission that horses rarely show, especially wild ones. "Esperanza," Joey murmured, touching the animal's forehead gently. "I'll call you Esperanza." Joey stood in the corral, his hand resting gently on Esperanza's forehead, the morning sun warming their unlikely communion. The massive Mustang remained kneeling before him, a posture so rare among horses that Joey felt as though he was witnessing something sacred. Time seemed suspended as boy and horse breathed together in the quiet Montana dawn. "You're safe with me," Joey whispered, his voice catching. "Te prometo." The sound of approaching footsteps broke the spell. Frank appeared at the corral fence, his weathered face registering shock at the scene before him. The old cowboy removed his hat, a gesture of unconscious reverence. "I've worked horses for 43 years, he said quietly. "Never seen anything like this." Esperanza rose slowly to his feet as Joey gently stroked his neck. The horse remained calm, though his ears swiveled toward Frank, monitoring the potential threat. "Thompson's coming back tonight," Frank warned, replacing his hat. "And he's not in a good mood. The buyer from Texas called yesterday, asking about progress." Joey's stomach tightened. "What buyer?" Frank leaned against the fence post, his expression grim. "Big rodeo outfit from Dallas. Thompson already settled on a price. $30,000 if the horse is broken. Nothing if it's still wild. And if he can't sell him..." Frank's voice trailed off. "What?" Joey pressed. "Said he'd send him straight to the slaughterhouse in Billings. Claims he won't feed useless mouths on his ranch." Joey's arms instinctively tightened around Esperanza's neck. The horse sensed his distress, shifting slightly but not pulling away, a remarkable display of trust given how recently they'd connected. "How much time do we have?" Joey asked, his mind racing. "1 week, maybe less. Thompson's made a bet with Jenkins that he can break this horse before the rodeo scouts arrive on Saturday." Frank checked his watch. "You better go now, kid. Day crew will be here soon." As Joey reluctantly left the corral, Esperanza followed him to the gate, their connection now a tangible thing that seemed to stretch between them even as distance grew. That afternoon, Joey pedaled furiously to Dr. Johnson's clinic, desperation driving him faster than ever before. He burst through the door, startling Lily, who was examining a border collie on the treatment table. "We need to do something now," Joey insisted, his words tumbling out between gasps for breath. "They're going to send Esperanza to slaughter if he's not broken by Saturday." Lily raised a calming hand. "Let me finish with Mrs. Hendricks's dog, then we'll talk." She turned to the elderly woman holding the collie. "Just a mild ear infection. Apply this ointment twice daily, and she'll be fine." After the client left, Lily led Joey to her small office at the back of the clinic. Stacks of folders and veterinary journals covered most surfaces, evidence of a mind constantly seeking knowledge. She gestured for Joey to sit while she sorted through a particularly tall pile of documents. "Joey, I've been consulting with animal rights attorneys over the past few days," she said, pulling out several folders. "It's complicated. Legally, the horse belongs to Thompson. But what if we prove there's mistreatment?" Joey leaned forward eagerly. "You saw the whip marks." Lily sighed, removing her glasses to rub tired eyes. "We would need more than suspicions. Courts require substantial evidence of ongoing abuse, not just harsh training methods." She paused, studying Joey's crestfallen expression. "But that doesn't mean we give up." She opened one of the folders, revealing photographs documenting Joey's progress with Esperanza. "I've been building a case file, and more importantly, I've been building support." Joey glanced through the photos, images capturing moments he'd shared with Esperanza over the past weeks, the gradual transformation from terrified wild animal to a horse capable of trust. Alongside the photos were statements from various community members who had witnessed their interactions. "People are talking about what you've done, Joey. It's creating ripples through Willow Creek." That night, Joey barely slept. His mind churned with possibilities and fears. The image of Esperanza loaded onto a slaughterhouse truck haunted him whenever he closed his eyes. By morning, exhaustion had settled into his bones, but determination burned brighter than ever. At dawn, Joey arrived at the Thompson Ranch to find a new obstacle, a heavy padlock securing the back gate he always used. The message was clear: his secret visits were no longer tolerated. Undeterred, Joey skirted the property until he found a section of fence obscured by juniper bushes. He squeezed through, tearing his shirt and scratching his arms on the barbed wire. When he reached Esperanza's corral, the horse greeted him with a soft nicker, a sound that pierced Joey's heart with its newfound familiarity. But as he approached, he noticed fresh welts across the Mustang's flanks. "What did they do to you?" Joey whispered, anger building in his chest. Frank appeared from the shadows of the barn. "Thompson had Rodriguez working him yesterday with the spurs. Horse nearly killed him." The old cowboy's face was drawn with concern. "Kid, you're taking a real risk coming here now. Thompson's got the hands watching for you." "I promised him I wouldn't abandon him," Joey said simply. Frank nodded, understanding passing between them. "I'll keep lookout. You've got 15 minutes. Joey spent those precious minutes with Esperanza, speaking softly, rebuilding the trust that Thompson's methods had damaged. The horse remained skittish, flinching at Joey's touch on the fresh welts, but still seeking connection. "We'll find a way," Joey promised, pressing his forehead against Esperanza's. Somehow, each day that week became increasingly difficult. Thompson had stationed ranch hands to patrol the property, forcing Joey to be more creative with his visits, coming at different times, using various entry points, keeping his interactions with Esperanza brief but meaningful. On Wednesday, Joey arrived to find Lily already at the ranch, her veterinary truck parked openly by the main barn. Keeping out of sight, he watched as she examined several horses while engaging Thompson in conversation. Her presence created the perfect distraction for Joey to slip unnoticed to Esperanza's corral. The Mustang had lost weight, his black coat dulled by stress and inadequate care. Yet when he caught Joey's scent, his ears perked forward and he approached the fence willingly. "Just 3 more days," Joey murmured, slipping a hand through the rails to touch Esperanza's velvety muzzle. "We need a miracle." That evening, Lily invited Joey to her clinic after hours. To his surprise, a small group had gathered: Pastor Wilson, Principal Braddock, Frank, and Jack Reed from the Willow Creek Weekly. "We've been building a coalition," Lily explained, spreading photos and documents across the examination table. "Each person here has witnessed what you've accomplished with Esperanza." Pastor Wilson stepped forward. "I spoke with Blake after Sunday service. He wouldn't budge on selling the horse, but he did listen when I suggested your methods might have merit." "Thompson cares about 2 things," Jack Reed added, tapping his notebook: "money and reputation. If we can make this about either one, we might have leverage." Principal Braddock placed a hand on Joey's shoulder. We're also exploring educational angles. This could become a pioneering program, with proper support. For the first time in days, hope flickered in Joey's chest. These adults, people with influence in Willow Creek, were taking him seriously, seeing value in his connection with Esperanza. "What can I do?" he asked. Lily smiled. "Keep doing exactly what you've been doing. Document everything. We'll handle the rest." Thursday morning dawned gray and threatening rain. Joey arrived at the ranch earlier than usual, determined to spend more time with Esperanza. As he approached their usual meeting spot, his heart froze. The corral was empty. Panic rising, Joey scanned the property until he spotted movement in the main training ring. There stood Esperanza, ropes binding his head, while Rodriguez, Thompson's head trainer, approached with a saddle. Thompson himself watched from the fence, his stance radiating impatient authority. Joey crept closer, keeping behind equipment and hay bales. He could see Esperanza's terror, the whites of his eyes showing, nostrils flared, body trembling with the effort not to bolt despite the restraints. "He's still fighting," Thompson called to Rodriguez. "Use the spurs. Show him who's boss." Rodriguez nodded grimly, adjusting metal spurs on his boots. Joey bit his lip until he tasted blood, fighting the urge to rush forward. A hand suddenly gripped his shoulder, Frank shaking his head in warning. "Not now, kid," he whispered. "You'll make it worse." Joey watched helplessly as Rodriguez struggled to mount Esperanza. The horse bucked violently, eyes wild with fear, his movements those of an animal fighting for its life rather than simple defiance. After 30 minutes of brutal training, Thompson called a halt. "Put him back. We'll try again this afternoon. That Texas buyer arrives tomorrow, and this horse better be rideable or it's over." Once Thompson and Rodriguez left, Frank helped Joey slip into the training ring where Esperanza stood trembling, head hanging low, spirit visibly dimmed. "Estoy aquí," Joey whispered, approaching slowly. "I'm here." The Mustang raised his head slightly, recognition flickering in his exhausted eyes. Joey reached out, gently stroking the sweat-soaked neck. For several minutes they stood together in silence, Joey's presence offering what comfort he could. "Tomorrow," Frank said finally. "Thompson's bringing the buyer at noon. That's your deadline." That night, Joey couldn't eat dinner. His uncle Miguel noticed his nephew pushing food around his plate but didn't press for explanations. The distance between them had grown too vast for casual conversation. Each locked in private struggles neither knew how to share. After midnight, unable to sleep, Joey slipped outside and sat beneath the stars, his thoughts with Esperanza. Would the horse remember their connection after today's brutality? Had Thompson's methods already begun to break his spirit? The questions circled like vultures in his mind. At dawn, Joey mounted his bicycle for what felt like a final journey to the Thompson Ranch. His heart hammered against his ribs as he approached, noticing the unusual number of vehicles already parked near the main house. Word of the potential sale had drawn a crowd, other ranchers, cowboys, curious townspeople. Joey abandoned his usual caution, walking openly toward the training area where a group had gathered. In the center of the ring stood Esperanza, head bound with ropes, flanked by Rodriguez and another handler. The Mustang's eyes darted frantically, searching until they found Joey at the edge of the crowd. A subtle shift in the horse's posture told Joey everything. Esperanza recognized him, remembered him, perhaps even hoped for him. Blake Thompson stood addressing a man in an expensive suit, presumably the buyer from Texas. Thompson's voice carried across the morning air, confident and boastful. "You'll see a demonstration at noon. This Mustang has spirit, but my men know how to handle him. He'll be perfect for your rodeo circuit." Joey slipped away, finding Lily at the edge of the property. Her face showed the strain of their shared concern. "What now?" Joey asked, desperation edging his voice. Lily squeezed his shoulder. "I've done everything I legally can. The rest depends on you, and Esperanza." As Joey turned to leave, his path was blocked by a ranch hand he didn't recognize. "Thompson wants all visitors to stay for the demonstration. Says everyone should see how a real horseman breaks a wild Mustang." Trapped, Joey found himself herded with the growing crowd toward the main corral. Thompson had created a spectacle, a public demonstration of his dominance over both the Mustang and the boy who had challenged his methods. At precisely noon, Thompson climbed onto the corral fence, commanding attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, today you'll witness the culmination of weeks of training. This wild Mustang, captured from the mountains of Wyoming, is about to meet his match." Rodriguez entered the corral, whip in hand. Two other handlers released Esperanza from his temporary pen into the main arena. The Mustang circled nervously, searching the crowd until his gaze locked with Joey's. In that moment of connection, Joey made his decision. Before anyone could stop him, Joey slipped between the fence rails and walked directly into the corral. A collective gasp rose from the crowd as Thompson shouted for someone to remove the boy. "Joey Martinez!" Thompson's voice boomed across the arena. "Get out of there immediately!" Joey stood his ground, keeping his eyes on Esperanza. "Let me show you another way," he called back, his voice steadier than he felt. The black Mustang, which had been circling nervously, stopped. His ears, previously flattened against his head in fear, shifted slightly forward at the sound of Joey's voice. "Please," Joey said, addressing Thompson but looking at Esperanza. "Just 5 minutes." Perhaps it was the crowd's expectant murmur or some calculation about the publicity value, but Thompson hesitated, then nodded curtly. 5 minutes. Then my men take over." Joey turned his back on the crowd, focusing entirely on Esperanza. He began to speak softly in his blend of English and Spanish, words meant only for the horse's ears. "Remember me," he whispered. "Remember what we built." On Thursday morning, 2 days before the deadline, Joey arrived at the ranch to find a new obstacle, a heavy padlock on the gate of entry he always used, with a sign that clearly stated, "Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted." Signed by Thompson and Associates, attorneys. Joey stared at the padlocked gate, his fingers tracing the cold metal of the new lock. The sign's bold red letters seemed to scream at him in the early morning light. "Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted." Signed by Thompson and Associates, attorneys. The message couldn't be clearer. His time with Esperanza was meant to end. For several long moments, Joey stood motionless, listening to the distant nickering of horses from inside the ranch. Somewhere beyond that locked gate, Esperanza was waiting, perhaps wondering why the boy who had promised to return every day hadn't appeared. "Promises matter," Joey whispered to himself, his grandfather's words echoing in his memory. Without further hesitation, Joey moved along the fence line, away from the main entrance. He found a section partially hidden by overgrown juniper bushes, where the barbed wire had loosened from one post. With practiced movements born from years of navigating ranch boundaries, he carefully pulled the wire apart, just enough to create a narrow opening, wincing as a sharp barb caught his sleeve and tore the fabric. A small price to pay. Once inside Thompson's property, Joey moved with the stealth of someone who knew he didn't belong but was determined to continue anyway. The morning sun cast long shadows as he crept between outbuildings, freezing whenever a ranch hand appeared in the distance. The weight of his trespassing hung heavily on his shoulders. He understood that being caught now could mean serious trouble not just for himself but potentially for his uncle as well. When Joey finally reached Esperanza's corral, his heart leapt at the soft nicker of recognition that greeted him. The black Mustang approached the fence immediately, his ears pricked forward in a display of eager anticipation that contradicted everything Thompson believed about the animal's nature. "Hey there," Joey whispered, reaching through the rails to stroke Esperanza's velvety muzzle. "Te extrañé. I missed you too." The horse pressed his forehead against the fence, seeking contact in a way that seemed almost human in its deliberateness. But Joey's relief quickly turned to anger as he noticed fresh marks across Esperanza's glossy black coat, evidence of Thompson's continued efforts to break the Mustang's spirit through force. "What did they do to you?" Joey asked, his voice breaking slightly as he ran his fingers gently over a particularly angry welt. "Kid, you're either brave or stupid, and I'm not sure which." Joey spun around to find Blake Thompson himself standing a few yards away, flanked by two burly ranch hands. The rancher's custom crocodile boots glinted in the morning sun, his silver belt buckle catching the light as he took a step forward. There was no escape route. Thompson had clearly been waiting for him. "I was expecting you," Thompson said, his voice deceptively calm. "Figured you wouldn't be able to stay away, despite my warning." Joey's mouth went dry as the two ranch hands moved to position themselves on either side of him. One was Jim Peterson, Tyler's father and Thompson's head of security, his deputy sheriff's badge glinting on his belt, even though he was off duty. "Mr. Thompson, please," Joey began, finding his voice despite his racing heart. "I just want to help the horse." Thompson's laugh was short and harsh. "Trespassing is a crime, boy, especially for someone with your family history." The threat was thinly veiled, the implication clear. Thompson would use Joey's Mexican heritage against him, potentially involving immigration authorities, despite Joey's American citizenship. "The horse responds to me," Joey said, standing his ground even as fear coursed through him. "He's not violent. He's just scared." "Jim," Thompson called to the deputy, "show the boy how we handle horses around here." Peterson nodded grimly and entered the corral, uncoiling a training whip from his belt. Esperanza immediately retreated to the far corner, ears flattened against his head, eyes wide with terror as his body tensed for flight that was impossible within the confined space. "No!" Joey cried, trying to move forward, but the second ranch hand grabbed him firmly by the shoulder. "You're going to watch and learn how real horsemen work," Thompson stated coldly. What happened next stunned everyone present. As Peterson advanced with the whip, Esperanza reared dramatically, hooves pawing the air. But instead of attacking the man as everyone expected, the Mustang gathered himself and leapt, clearing the 5-foot corral fence in a single powerful jump that seemed to defy physics. The massive horse landed with surprising grace on the outside and immediately positioned himself protectively in front of Joey, his large body forming a barrier between the boy and the men. "Jesus Christ," muttered the ranch hand who had been holding Joey, instinctively backing away. "Get control of that animal," Thompson shouted, but neither man moved forward. The Mustang's ears were pinned back, his stance wide and defensive, nostrils flaring with each breath. Not attacking, but clearly communicating that he would if necessary. "Blake Thompson!" The authoritative female voice cut through the tense standoff. Lily Johnson strode purposefully across the yard, followed by Sheriff Dave Miller in his official uniform, and surprisingly, Pastor Robert Wilson from the Methodist Church. "What the hell is this?" Thompson demanded, his face flushing with anger. "This is private property." "We're here on behalf of the State Animal Protection Department," Lily announced, holding up an official-looking document. "We've received reports of animal mistreatment at your facilities." "This is ridiculous." Thompson turned to the sheriff. "Dave, are you going to allow this invasion?" Sheriff Miller, a stocky man of few words, shrugged his shoulders. "The doctor has the paperwork in order, Blake. I'm just here to make sure everything stays peaceful." As they argued, more vehicles began arriving at the ranch. The editor of the local newspaper emerged from his car with a camera around his neck. Several teachers from Joey's school appeared, followed by Principal Braddock. Frank stood quietly by the barn entrance, watching the scene unfold with a hint of satisfaction in his weathered face. "What is this? A circus?" Thompson's voice rose with each new arrival. "It's the community speaking up," Pastor Wilson replied calmly. "Blake, we've witnessed what this young man has accomplished with an animal everyone considered beyond help. It's remarkable." Lily stepped forward holding a thick folder. "I have complete documentation of this horse's behavioral evolution over the past weeks. I also have testimonies from your own employees about training methods that violate state animal protection laws." "Frank," Thompson turned furiously toward his old ranch hand. "You'll regret this betrayal." Frank met his employer's gaze steadily. "The world is changing, boss. Maybe it's time we change too." Thompson looked around, suddenly realizing he was surrounded not just by authorities but by a significant portion of the community that had previously feared and respected him without question. His jaw worked as he processed this unexpected challenge to his authority. "What do you want?" he finally asked, his voice less confident than before. We want to give Joey a chance to demonstrate what he's accomplished, Lily replied. Tomorrow, publicly. If he can prove he can communicate with this horse in a way no one else has managed, you'll reconsider selling him to the rodeo. Thompson laughed bitterly. And if he fails? Then you do whatever you think best with your investment, Lily concluded. But with witnesses present, Thompson looked from the Mustang, still standing protectively near Joey, to the gathered crowd. The calculation was visible in his eyes, the potential embarrassment of backing down versus the public relations nightmare if he refused this reasonable request. After a long, tense moment, he nodded curtly. Tomorrow at noon. I want to see this miracle everyone's talking about. As the crowd began to disperse, Joey remained with Esperanza, one hand resting on the horse's shoulder. The Mustang had relaxed slightly but remained vigilant, his body still positioned between Joey and potential threats. What had happened was extraordinary. A wild horse choosing to protect a human rather than flee to freedom when given the chance. You could have run, Joey whispered, stroking the muscular neck. Why didn't you? Esperanza turned his head to look at Joey, and in that moment, the boy understood something profound about trust. The horse had made a choice based not on instinct but on connection, a connection that defied conventional understanding of wild animals. Lily approached cautiously, respecting the space between boy and horse. Joey, what happened here today is unprecedented. Horses don't typically protect humans, especially not wild ones. He knows I'm trying to help him, Joey said simply. We need to prepare for tomorrow, Lily continued. Thompson won't make this easy, and that Texas buyer is arriving in the morning. As twilight fell over the Montana landscape, Joey sat beside Esperanza in a small paddock Lily had convinced Thompson to provide temporarily. The community had rallied, bringing fresh hay, water, and even a portable corral panel to create a safe space away from the main ranch facilities. Frank had quietly delivered Joey's backpack containing the items he'd been using in his work with Esperanza: a soft brush, apple slices, and a small portable speaker that played the gentle classical music that seemed to calm the Mustang. Joey brushed Esperanza's coat in long, smooth strokes, speaking softly about everything and nothing. Memories of Mexico, stories his grandfather had told him, dreams of what might be possible. The horse listened, occasionally nickering softly as if responding to specific words or memories. Tomorrow will change everything, Joey murmured, his fingers tracing the white star on Esperanza's forehead that was barely visible against his black coat. One way or another. When Miguel Martinez arrived unexpectedly, Joey felt a momentary panic. His uncle had discovered his secret activities at last. But instead of anger, Miguel's face showed something Joey hadn't seen directed at him in years: pride. Your father would be proud, Sobrino, Miguel said quietly in Spanish, watching the easy way Esperanza accepted Joey's touch. He had the same gift with difficult horses. As darkness settled over the ranch, Joey leaned against Esperanza's warm side, watching stars appear one by one in the vast Montana sky. Tomorrow at noon, he would face Blake Thompson's challenge with the entire community as witnesses. The Texas buyer would be there with his checkbook ready, and Joey would have one chance to demonstrate that there was another way to connect with these magnificent creatures, a way built on respect rather than dominance. Tomorrow at noon, announced Thompson with a challenging smile, the boy will have his chance to show this miracle everyone's talking about. But if he fails, the horse goes to Texas as planned, and as for you, boy, my lawyers will have much to discuss with Immigration Services about illegal visits to private property. The news of the showdown between Joey Martinez and Blake Thompson spread through Willow Creek like wildfire on a dry summer day. By sunrise, cars and trucks had begun lining the dirt road leading to the Thompson Ranch, creating a makeshift parking lot that stretched nearly half a mile. Families with children, ranchers in their Sunday boots, teachers from the high school. It seemed half the town had turned out to witness what many were already calling the Miracle Horse Boy. Joey had spent the night in the small paddock with Esperanza, sleeping fitfully under the stars, his head resting against the Mustang's warm flank. As dawn broke, he watched the ranch come alive with activity. Workers setting up temporary fencing to create an impromptu arena, Thompson directing the placement of hay bales for seeding, reporters from Great Falls, and Helena setting up cameras. "They're turning this into a spectacle," Joey whispered to Esperanza, who stood alert beside him, ears flicking nervously at the growing commotion. "But we know it's not about showing off, don't we? It's about trust." The Mustang nickered softly, nudging Joey's shoulder with his muzzle, a gesture that had developed between them, the horse's way of seeking reassurance. Joey stroked the black coat, feeling the muscles beneath tense and relax with each breath. Miguel Martinez arrived around 9, carrying a small bundle wrapped in a faded bandana. Joey watched with surprise as his uncle approached the paddock fence, his usually stoic face lined with worry. "How are you, sobrino?" Miguel asked, his voice gentler than Joey had heard in years. "Nervous," Joey admitted. "What if I fail? What if Esperanza gets scared with all these people?" Miguel unwrapped the bundle, revealing a simple woven bracelet of red and black threads. "This belonged to your father. Your grandfather made it for him when he tamed his first difficult horse. He extended it through the fence. For luck." Joey's throat tightened as he accepted the gift, sliding it onto his wrist. "I didn't know Dad was good with horses." "The best in Chihuahua," Miguel said, a fleeting smile crossing his weathered face. "It's in your blood, Joey. I should have seen it sooner." Around 11:30, Dr. Lily Johnson arrived with Principal Braddock. They found Joey sitting cross-legged in the dirt beside Esperanza, the horse standing relaxed despite the growing crowd just beyond the paddock fence. "You've done something remarkable already," Lily said, checking her documents one last time. "No matter what happens next." Joey nodded, but his stomach churned with anxiety. Through gaps in the gathering crowd, he could see a sleek black Cadillac SUV with Texas plates parked near Thompson's house. The buyer had arrived. At precisely noon, Blake Thompson strode to the center of the makeshift arena, custom boots gleaming in the midday sun. Beside him walked a heavy-set man in an expensive suit and cowboy hat, clearly the Texas buyer. The crowd quieted as Thompson raised his hands. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Thompson Ranch." His voice boomed with practiced authority. "Today we're gathered for what some are calling a miracle." His tone carried an unmistakable note of skepticism. "This young man," he gestured toward Joey, "claims to have tamed a Mustang that professional trainers with decades of experience couldn't approach without risking life and limb." The Texas buyer laughed, adjusting his bolo tie with bejeweled fingers. Thompson continued, "As a businessman, I believe in fair challenges. The boy will have 20 minutes to demonstrate his methods." The pause was deliberate, drawing chuckles from some of the older ranchers. "Then we'll see what a true horseman can do." Two ranch hands approached the paddock, ready to lead Esperanza to the arena. The Mustang immediately tensed, ears flattening against his head as the unfamiliar men came near. "I'll bring him myself," Joey said firmly, surprising himself with his boldness. Thompson frowned but nodded curtly. "Arena's yours for 20 minutes, boy. Make it count." Joey took a deep breath, placing a hand gently on Esperanza's neck. "Together," he whispered. "Juntos." The walk to the arena felt impossibly long. Every step brought them closer to the hundreds of watching eyes. Joey could feel Esperanza's anxiety building, the quickened heartbeat beneath his palm, the slight tremor running through the powerful muscles. The Mustang had never faced such a large crowd before, and Joey worried the sensory overload might trigger his deepest fears. As they entered the arena through a narrow gate, a collective gasp rose from the crowd. Esperanza's coat gleamed like obsidian in the midday sun, his wild beauty undimmed by captivity. Joey felt a surge of pride walking beside this magnificent creature that everyone else had feared or sought to break. "Hey, border boy!" The jeering voice of Tyler Peterson cut through the murmurs. "Horse is probably only half trained, just like you." Joey flinched but kept moving forward. He noticed his classmates hushing Tyler, some even shooting him disapproving looks. A small change, but significant. In the center of the arena, Joey faced the expectant crowd. Thompson stood with the Texas buyer at the fence, arms crossed, expression smug. The buyer was already shaking his head, clearly unimpressed by the slight Mexican-American boy and the still nervous Mustang. "This is ridiculous," the Texan drawled loudly. "Where's his equipment? No saddle, no bridle, not even a rope? What kind of demonstration is this?" Joey turned away from them, focusing entirely on Esperanza. The horse's eyes darted nervously around the arena, taking in the unfamiliar environment filled with threatening human scents and sounds. Joey stood perfectly still, breathing deeply, making himself the eye of calm in this storm of stimuli. "Hola, Esperanza," he said softly, his voice barely carrying beyond the few feet between them. "It's just me, just us." The crowd grew restless as minutes passed, with Joey simply standing before the Mustang, occasionally murmuring words too quiet for anyone else to hear. Thompson checked his watch pointedly, exchanging knowing glances with the buyer. "He's not doing anything," someone called from the crowd. "Waste of time," another voice agreed. But Joey ignored them all, his attention completely focused on the subtle language of Esperanza's body, the gradual relaxation of his ears, the softening of his eye, the less frequent flaring of his nostrils. These tiny signals told Joey everything he needed to know about the horse's emotional state. 10 minutes into the demonstration, Joey slowly raised his hand toward Esperanza's muzzle. The Mustang considered it for a long moment before gently touching his nose to Joey's palm. A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. "Look at that," someone whispered. "The horse isn't afraid of him." "Any fool can feed a horse treats," Thompson called out dismissively. "Let's see him ride it." Joey continued his quiet communication with Esperanza, moving his hands slowly along the horse's neck, each touch a conversation about trust and safety. When he finally turned to address Thompson, his voice carried a quiet confidence that surprised many who knew him only as the silent, withdrawn nephew of Miguel Martinez. "This isn't about dominating," Joey said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "It's about mutual trust." With deliberate movements, Joey leaned close to Esperanza's ear, whispering something that caused the massive horse to lower his head. Then, to the astonishment of everyone watching, the Mustang bent his front legs and knelt completely on the ground. "My God," Pastor Wilson breathed. "Did you see that?" Joey carefully mounted the Mustang's bare back. Esperanza rose smoothly, the boy balancing easily without reins or saddle. A hush fell over the crowd as horse and rider began to move in perfect harmony, starting with a slow walk around the arena. "Vamos, amigo," Joey murmured, his hands resting lightly on Esperanza's mane. With the subtlest shifts of his weight and barely perceptible pressure from his legs, Joey guided Esperanza through a series of movements that grew increasingly fluid. The walk became a trot. The trot evolved into a controlled canter. Horse and rider moved as one entity, communicating through a language beyond words or force. The silence from the spectators was absolute. Even Thompson had stopped his running commentary, watching with narrowed eyes as Joey and Esperanza demonstrated a connection that defied everything he believed about horse training. When they returned to the center of the arena, Joey slid gracefully from Esperanza's back. The Mustang lowered his head, and Joey wrapped his arms around the powerful neck in an embrace that spoke volumes about their bond. The explosion of applause that followed startled Esperanza, but he remained steady beside Joey, drawing confidence from the boy's calm presence. Thompson's face had lost its smugness, replaced by a calculation that Joey recognized, the look of a businessman reassessing a situation. The Texas buyer approached the fence, his expression thoughtful. "Blake, this ain't a rodeo horse," the man said, gesturing toward Esperanza and Joey. "It's something much more valuable. The boys created a method worth more than the animal." Joey stood his ground as Thompson entered the arena, the Texas buyer close behind. He could feel Esperanza tensing beside him, but the horse didn't retreat. "How did you do it?" Thompson demanded. "3 of my best men couldn't get near him without getting attacked." "I listened," Joey replied simply. "He was scared, not mean." The buyer circled them, studying Esperanza with new interest. "This ain't breaking, Blake. This is something different, something marketable." Before Thompson could respond, Dr. Lily Johnson approached with determined strides, clutching a folder of documents. Pastor Wilson and Principal Braddock flanked her, along with several other community members who had witnessed Joey's work over the past weeks. "Mr. Thompson," Lily said firmly, "here's a formal proposal. The Willow Creek community has come together to create a rehabilitation program for traumatized horses, based on Joey's method. We've raised funds to purchase the Mustang for the price you paid," Pastor Wilson added, "and we want to hire Joey as the program's principal instructor." "This is madness," Thompson muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. "It's business," corrected the Texas buyer. "Blake, if you're smart, you'll be part of this instead of fighting it. Think of the publicity." Joey watched the calculation in Thompson's eyes shift again. The man was nothing if not adaptable to changing winds. After a long moment of consideration, Thompson extended his hand. $12,000 and the horse is yours, he said finally. "But I want my name associated with the program. Thompson Horse Rehabilitation Program has a nice ring to it." As the crowd dispersed and arrangements were finalized, Joey remained with Esperanza in the quiet corner of the arena. Miguel approached, something like wonder in his eyes as he watched his nephew with the horse that had defeated professional trainers. "Your father would be proud," he said simply, resting a hand on Joey's shoulder. "I know I am." While Lily Johnson spoke with reporters and Thompson posed for photographs by a hastily made sign for the Thompson Horse Rehabilitation Program, Joey sat on the ground beside Esperanza, the Mustang's head resting gently in his lap. In this moment of quiet connection, far from the attention and negotiations, Joey felt a peace he hadn't known since before his parents died. "We did it," he whispered to Esperanza. "We're going to help other horses like you, and maybe other kids like me." The Mustang's eyes, once wild with terror, now regarded him with a calm trust that needed no words. Two broken souls finding wholeness in each other's company beneath the vast Montana sky. 3 months after the showdown at Thompson Ranch, the crisp autumn air carried the scent of freshly cut hay and the sound of hammering across the once-abandoned barn at the edge of Willow Creek. A new sign, professionally painted and mounted above the wide entrance doors, caught the morning light. Thompson Horse Rehabilitation Center, a new beginning for horses and humans. Joey Martinez stood in the center of the renovated main space, now divided into several specialized areas for different aspects of horse rehabilitation. The old hayloft had been converted into a small office and observation platform, while the stalls had been rebuilt with wider doorways and removable partitions to accommodate horses with various comfort levels. The dirt floor had been regraded and covered with a special cushioned material, easier on injured hooves and safer for nervous animals prone to sudden movements. "What do you think, Esperanza?" Joey asked, turning to the black Mustang who stood quietly beside him, no halter or lead rope needed. "Pretty good transformation, right?" Esperanza snorted softly, ears forward in what Joey had come to recognize as curiosity, mixed with cautious approval. The horse had become more expressive over the past months, his body language evolving as his trust deepened. Joey noticed how the Mustang's eyes no longer darted constantly to exit points, how his muscles remained relaxed even when unexpected noises echoed through the barn. "Joey," Lily Johnson called from the entrance, clipboard in hand. "The new horse is arriving in 20 minutes. Are you ready?" Joey nodded, giving Esperanza a final pat before walking toward Lily. The transformation of the abandoned barn into a state-of-the-art rehabilitation facility had been remarkably swift once Thompson had thrown his influence behind the project. What began as a reluctant business decision on Thompson's part had evolved into something resembling genuine interest, especially after the Western Horseman magazine had featured the program on its cover last month. "This is our most challenging case yet," Lily explained, showing Joey the file. 7-year-old quarter horse, severe abuse from previous owner, attempted to attack 3 different handlers at the rescue that pulled him from the neglect situation. Joey studied the photograph of a chestnut horse with dull eyes and visible ribs. "What's his name?" "They've been calling him Red, but it's not a name he responds to positively." "Then we'll find him a new one," Joey said simply. Outside, a small group of teenagers was gathering near the round pen. 4 months ago, these same kids would have been unlikely companions, Tyler Peterson, the sheriff's son who had once tormented Joey, Sarah Two Feathers from the Crow Reservation 20 miles away, Miguel's sister's son Carlos, who had recently moved from El Paso, and Emily Chen, the quiet daughter of Willow Creek's only doctor. Now they formed the core of Joey's student training program, each bringing unique perspectives to their work with traumatized horses. "Remember what we talked about yesterday?" Joey addressed the group, slipping naturally into his role as instructor despite being the same age as his students. "When Red arrives, no sudden movements, no loud voices. He needs to feel safe before anything else can happen." Tyler raised his hand, a gesture that still surprised Joey. The transformation in their relationship had been one of the most unexpected outcomes of the past months. "My dad said this horse almost killed someone. Should we be more careful than usual?" "Horses don't just attack without reason," Joey explained. "Something made him feel so threatened that attack seemed like his only option. Our job is to show him he has other choices now." The trailer arrived precisely on schedule. Joey positioned his students at a respectful distance while he and Lily approached the vehicle. Even before the ramp was lowered, they could hear the frantic movement inside. Hooves striking metal walls, the unmistakable sounds of a terrified animal. "Take your time," Joey called to the transport driver who seemed eager to unload and leave. "We're not in a hurry." Joey approached the trailer slowly, stopping several feet from the ramp. He began to speak softly, a mixture of English and Spanish that had become his signature method of initial contact. The frantic movement inside gradually slowed as the horse inside seemed to listen. "Estamos aquí para ayudarte," Joey said gently. "We're here to help you." When the chestnut horse finally emerged, his body was trembling, white showing around his eyes, every muscle tensed for flight or fight. Joey remained perfectly still, simply observing, letting the horse take in his new surroundings without additional pressure. "He's scanning for threats," Joey explained to his students, speaking barely above a whisper. "Watch his ears. They're telling us everything about what he's thinking." Over the next hour, Joey demonstrated the patience that had become the foundation of the program's success. He didn't approach the horse, didn't try to touch him, or move him into a stall. Instead, he simply existed in the same space, occasionally speaking softly, letting the animal set the pace of their introduction. By afternoon, the chestnut horse had relaxed enough to accept water from a bucket Joey placed nearby, though he still maintained a cautious distance from all humans. It was a small victory, but Joey knew from experience that these initial moments set the tone for everything that would follow. "You did good with them today." Blake Thompson's voice startled Joey as he was finishing evening feed. The rancher had taken to stopping by the center several times a week, his interest seemingly genuine despite his initial skepticism. "Red's going to need a lot of time," Joey replied, closing the feed bin, "but he's smarter than people give him credit for." Thompson nodded, leaning against the doorframe. "Got a call from a professor at Montana State yesterday. Wants to document your methods formally. Says it could revolutionize how we understand horse psychology." Joey felt a flutter of excitement mixed with apprehension. "What did you tell him?" "Told him to come see for himself." Thompson adjusted his hat. "Boy your age should be thinking about education, about the future. This could be a scholarship opportunity." The idea of university had never seemed possible to Joey before. College was for kids with money, with perfect English, with parents who could navigate the complicated application processes. Later that evening, Joey sat cross-legged in Esperanza's stall, the Mustang lying comfortably nearby. This had become their nightly ritual, a quiet time of connection after the day's activities. Joey often read aloud from books about horse behavior, or played soft classical music from a small speaker, noticing how Esperanza seemed particularly responsive to Bach. "Thompson says people from the university want to study what we're doing," Joey told the horse, who was listening with one ear cocked in his direction. "He mentioned scholarships. College." Joey paused, the unfamiliar concept still difficult to grasp. "But that would mean leaving you." Esperanza shifted slightly, his dark eyes reflecting the barn's soft lighting. Joey had learned to read the Mustang's expressions with remarkable accuracy. This was concern, perhaps sensing Joey's mixed emotions. "I don't know if I can do that," Joey continued, running his hand along Esperanza's neck. "We're just getting started here." The following morning, Joey was summoned to Principal Braddock's office during his weekly half-day at school. The arrangement allowing him to attend classes in the morning and work at the center in the afternoons had been part of the program's establishment, with the strict condition that his grades remain above average. "Joey, your science teacher tells me you've been spending your lunch periods in the library researching equine psychology," Principal Braddock said, gesturing for him to sit. Joey nodded cautiously, uncertain if this was a problem. "I've been speaking with Dr. Johnson and some contacts at Montana State University," she continued. "There's an opportunity for you to earn college credits while continuing your work at the center. A sort of early enrollment program, with mentorship from their equine studies department." Joey felt his heart rate quicken. "I'd still be able to work with the horses. That's the beauty of it. Your work would become part of your education. The university wants to document and formalize your methods." She leaned forward, her expression serious. "Joey, this could lead to a full scholarship when you graduate. A chance to turn what you're doing into a career with academic credentials behind it." As Joey walked back to class, his mind raced with possibilities he'd never allowed himself to consider. The hallway that had once been a gauntlet of harassment now felt different. Students nodded in greeting, some even stopping to ask about the center or Esperanza, who had become something of a local celebrity after the Western Horseman article. At the center that afternoon, Joey found a new challenge waiting. The chestnut horse, temporarily named Red, had refused all food since arriving, and stood trembling in the corner of his stall despite the open door offering access to a private paddock. Joey sat quietly outside the stall, observing. "He's not just scared," he told Tyler, who was assisting him that day. "Look at how he holds his head, how he flinches at specific sounds but not others. Someone used feeding time to hurt him." "How could anyone do that?" Tyler asked, genuine distress in his voice. "People hurt what they don't understand," Joey replied, thinking about his own experiences, or what they fear. Over the next hour, Joey tried various approaches, different foods, different containers, different locations. Nothing worked until he had an unexpected insight. "The classical music," he said suddenly. "Bring the speaker from Esperanza's stall." Tyler returned with the small Bluetooth speaker, and Joey selected a Bach cello suite, Esperanza's favorite. As the gentle notes filled the air, Joey placed a small amount of alfalfa on the ground and retreated completely, sitting with his back to the stall, seemingly indifferent to whether the horse ate or not. 20 minutes later, the soft sound of chewing confirmed his theory. The music had created an environment different enough from the horse's traumatic associations that he could finally eat without fear. "You're doing it," Lily observed from the doorway, watching as Joey documented the breakthrough in the detailed journal they kept for each horse. "Creating a methodology that can be replicated." Joey looked up. "Principal Braddock told me about the university program." Lily nodded. "It's an amazing opportunity, Joey. But it would mean changes, possibly having Esperanza become more of an ambassador for the program while you divide your time between here and Bozeman." The thought created an immediate knot in Joey's stomach. "I can't leave him." "No one's suggesting separation," Lily clarified. "But your relationship might need to evolve if you're going to help more horses and train more people." That evening, Joey rode Esperanza bareback through the hills surrounding Willow Creek, the golden autumn light painting the landscape in warm hues. The Mustang moved beneath him with fluid grace, their communication now so refined that the slightest shift in Joey's weight or the gentlest pressure from his legs was all the guidance needed. As they reached the crest of a hill overlooking the valley, Joey spotted a small group of wild horses in the distance, perhaps 12 animals grazing peacefully in the late afternoon sun. He felt Esperanza's attention shift, the Mustang's ears pricked forward with keen interest. "Do you miss them?" Joey asked softly, patting the strong black neck. "Your old life." Esperanza nickered softly, a sound Joey had come to recognize as contentment rather than longing. The Mustang had found a new purpose, a new herd of sorts. Joey wondered if perhaps that was the lesson, that growth sometimes meant expanding one's circle rather than remaining within familiar boundaries. Under the vast Montana sky, watching the distant wild horses while sitting astride a once untamable Mustang, Joey began to see a path forward: the university program, the expanded center, the opportunities to help more horses and train more people. These weren't threats to his bond with Esperanza, but extensions of what they had built together. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the golden grass, Joey leaned forward to whisper in Esperanza's ear. The Mustang turned his head slightly, listening as he always did, before breaking into a gentle lope that carried them homeward, toward the future they would build together. While Joey contemplates the stars, lying beside Esperanza on the hills of Montana, a revolutionary idea begins to form in his mind. He didn't have to choose between education and his work with horses. He could bring education to Willow Creek and transform the small center into a true research institute. But this would require something he had never done: publicly confronting the traditional breaking methods that still dominated the American equestrian world. The idea took root in Joey's mind as he lay beside Esperanza under the vast Montana sky, stars scattered like diamond dust across the darkness. If he couldn't choose between education and his work with horses, perhaps he didn't have to. Maybe he could bring education to Willow Creek, transforming their small center into a genuine research institute. But that would require something he had never done before: publicly challenging the traditional breaking methods that still dominated the American equestrian world. The thought both terrified and exhilarated him as he watched the constellations wheel slowly overhead. Beside him, Esperanza's breathing had fallen into the deep, steady rhythm of sleep, his massive body radiating warmth against the autumn chill. "We could change things," Joey whispered to the sleeping horse. "Not just for you, but for all of them." The following morning, Joey arrived at the center earlier than usual. A thin layer of frost covered the ground, crunching beneath his boots as he made his way to the records room they had established in the old TAC area. If he was going to build a case against traditional methods, he needed evidence, not just anecdotal success stories, but documented histories of the horses they'd rehabilitated. Esperanza's file was the thickest, filled with Lily's meticulous notes, photographs chronicling his transformation, and Joey's daily observations. But there was a gap that nagged at Joey. The Mustang's life before captivity remained a mystery, sketched only in vague terms from the auction catalog. Captured in Wyoming mountains, sole survivor of decimated herd. What had actually happened to Esperanza's family? The question had lingered in Joey's mind since their first encounter. The Mustang's reactions to certain stimuli, the panic at the sound of helicopters, the way he positioned himself protectively when younger horses were nearby, suggested a complex trauma beyond mere capture. That afternoon, Joey approached Blake Thompson as the rancher was leaving after his regular visit. "Mr. Thompson, do you have records about where Esperanza came from? Before the auction, I mean." Thompson seemed surprised by the question. "Should be in the purchase documents." "Why?" "I think understanding his past might help with our methods. Maybe explain some of his behaviors." Something flickered in Thompson's eyes. Reluctance? Perhaps even guilt. "I'll see what I can find," he said finally. "Might have to contact the capture operation that sold him to the auction house." 3 days later, Thompson arrived with a thin folder. "Found these in my office. Contact information for the outfit that rounded up your horse." His voice was unusually subdued. "They operate out of Sheridan, helicopter captures mostly." Joey spent that evening researching the company online. Their website displayed professional photographs of Mustangs being herded by helicopters into holding pens, images presented as necessary conservation work. But reading between the lines, Joey recognized the profit motive beneath the conservation language. With Lily's help, he arranged a phone interview with a former employee who had left the company after disagreeing with their methods. The man's voice was gruff, defensive at first, then increasingly forthcoming as Joey explained his interest. "That big black stallion? Yeah, I remember him. Mean son of a... The man caught himself. Sorry, kid, but that was a bad roundup, even by our standards. Joey felt his heart rate quicken. What happened? Drought had pushed that herd into a canyon area. Should have waited for them to move on naturally, but we had quotas to meet. The man's voice grew distant with memory. Helicopter spooked them bad. Lead mare panicked, ran the wrong direction. 4 horses went over a cliff edge, including a foal. Joey closed his eyes, picturing the scene. Was one of them a black mare? A pause. Yeah, how'd you know? Just a guess, Joey said quietly, though he was certain now. Esperanza had witnessed the death of his mother, possibly his siblings. That black stallion went crazy after that, charged the handlers, broke through a fence, took 3 men with tranquilizer guns to bring him down. The man sighed heavily. Look, kid, I'm not proud of that day. It's why I quit eventually. Thank you for telling me, Joey said, his voice tight with emotion. That night, Joey sat in Esperanza's stall long after the center had closed, the Mustang standing watchful beside him. I know what happened now, Joey whispered, stroking the horse's neck. I'm so sorry about your family. Esperanza lowered his head, pressing his muzzle against Joey's chest, in a gesture that had become his way of offering comfort. It struck Joey anew how the horse who had experienced such trauma could still find the capacity to comfort others. The next morning, Joey shared his discoveries with Lily and the student volunteers. Understanding what he witnessed helps explain so many of his reactions, he explained. His protective behavior toward younger horses, his panic at the sound of helicopters, these aren't random, they're responses to specific trauma. Like PTSD in humans, Lily observed. Joey nodded. Exactly. And if we recognize that horses carry these memories in their bodies just like people do, it changes how we approach rehabilitation. Over the following weeks, Joey dove deeper into research, spending hours in the Willow Creek Library and on the phone with researchers from various universities. He discovered studies on equine memory and trauma that had been largely ignored by traditional training methods. Each new piece of information helped him understand not just Esperanza, but all the horses in their program. On a crisp November morning, Joey received an email that made his heart skip. Western Horseman magazine wanted to do a follow-up feature, focusing specifically on the methodology he was developing. The editor mentioned potentially controversial aspects. Your approach fundamentally challenges traditional breaking methods that have dominated for centuries. Are you prepared for the pushback this might generate? The question kept Joey awake that night. Was he ready to publicly challenge traditions that ranchers like Thompson had followed their entire lives? To suggest that methods passed down through generations were fundamentally flawed? His answer came unexpectedly the next day. A letter arrived at the center, its tone hostile. What you're doing is undermining centuries of horsemanship. Traditional methods work. You're creating a generation of soft handlers who won't survive in the real world of horses. The letter was signed by Chuck Daniels, a nationally known horse trainer famous for his 3-day breaking clinics. Joey had seen videos of Daniels' methods, the use of spurs, the exhaustion of horses until they submitted, the celebration of dominance over partnership. He's worried, Lily observed after reading the letter. Your success threatens his livelihood. Joey felt a determination crystallize within him. Then maybe it's time to be more public about what we're doing. That weekend, Joey sat cross-legged on his bed, laptop open, watching videos of rodeos. The footage showed horses being spurred until they bucked wildly, their eyes wide with fear and pain. He forced himself to watch every minute, wincing at particularly brutal moments, knowing that this could have been Esperanza's fate. That's what they wanted to do to you, he whispered, glancing at the photograph of Esperanza on his nightstand. A violent thunderstorm struck Willow Creek the following Tuesday night. Joey was awakened at 2 a.m. by a call from the night watchman at the center. The black horse is going crazy, the man reported, voice tense. Never seen him like this. Already kicked through a stall partition. Joey dressed hastily and had his uncle drive him through the pounding rain to the center. Inside, the sound was deafening. Rain hammering on the metal roof, thunder cracking overhead, and beneath it all, the terrified whinnying of Esperanza. The Mustang was drenched in sweat, eyes rolling white with fear as he paced frantically in what remained of his stall. Each thunderclap sent him pressing against the walls as if trying to escape an invisible threat. The helicopter, Joey realized aloud. The thunder sounds like the helicopter that drove his herd over the cliff. Without hesitation, Joey entered the damaged stall, speaking softly in Spanish as he approached the panicked horse. Esperanza's nostrils flared, recognizing Joey's scent even through his terror. "Estoy aquí," Joey soothed. "I'm here. You're safe." For hours, Joey sat on the stall floor, sometimes singing softly, sometimes just being present as Esperanza gradually calmed. By dawn, the Mustang had settled enough to rest his head against Joey's shoulder, exhaustion evident in every line of his powerful body. Joey called in sick to school that day, remaining at the center to observe Esperanza for any lasting effects of the night's trauma. As he watched the Mustang cautiously accept food from Tyler's hand, a sign of returning confidence, Joey realized something profound. Healing wasn't linear. Even Esperanza, who had made such progress, could be thrust back into his trauma by triggers as unpredictable as weather. 2 weeks later, Joey found himself facing Chuck Daniels in person at the Montana Agricultural Fair. The famous trainer had spotted Joey demonstrating gentle techniques with one of their recently rehabilitated horses and had approached with a challenging smirk. "So you're the miracle worker everyone's talking about," Daniels said, his voice carrying so others would turn to listen. "The boy who thinks we've been doing it wrong for centuries." Joey met the man's gaze steadily. "I think horses communicate differently than we've been taught to believe. And I think fear isn't the same as respect." Daniels laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What you do might make for nice pets, but real working horses need discipline, structure, a firm hand." "Is that what you call it?" Joey asked quietly. "Because from where I stand it looks like breaking their spirit, not building a partnership." A small crowd had gathered, ranchers and horse owners listening intently to the exchange between the famous trainer and the teenage boy who had become something of a local celebrity. "This isn't about sentimentality," Joey continued, surprising himself with his confidence. "It's about effectiveness. Our horses work willingly, not from fear. They're healthier, more responsive, and they don't break down physically or mentally." Daniel's face flushed. "Easy to say when you're working with pampered rescue cases. Try your methods on real ranch horses that need to work cattle all day." "We already are." Thompson's voice cut in as the rancher joined the circle. "Martinez has been helping train my working string. Productivity's up 30% since we implemented his methods." The unexpected support from Thompson left Daniels momentarily speechless. As the crowd dispersed, Joey felt a hand on his shoulder. His uncle Miguel. "It's time," Miguel said softly. "You should visit the place where your parents died. Take Esperanza with you." The suggestion startled Joey. In 3 years, he had never returned to the stretch of highway near the border where the accident had occurred. The thought filled him with dread, yet something in his uncle's suggestion resonated deeply. 3 days later, Joey and Esperanza set out on their first long journey together. The Mustang traveled calmly in the special trailer Thompson had provided, seemingly understanding the importance of their mission. At the roadside memorial his grandparents had erected, Joey finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of his loss. Tears he had held back for years flowed freely as he knelt on the sun-baked earth, Esperanza standing protectively beside him. "I miss them so much," Joey whispered, his face pressed against Esperanza's mane. The horse remained perfectly still, offering the comfort of his solid presence as Joey's grief poured out at last. When they returned to Willow Creek, something had shifted in both of them. Joey felt lighter, as if releasing his grief had freed something within him. Esperanza seemed more settled, more present, as if helping Joey through his pain had somehow eased his own. During a routine examination the following week, Lily discovered something remarkable on Esperanza's left flank. a pattern of white hairs forming a distinctive mark partially hidden by his winter coat. "This isn't random," she said, photographing the marking. "It's too symmetrical." Research revealed that the marking matched descriptions in historical records of a specific lineage of Mustangs with special significance to the Crow people. Joey reached out to the Tribal Cultural Center, sending photographs and asking if anyone might recognize the pattern. The response came swiftly, an invitation to bring Esperanza to the reservation. When they arrived, an elderly man named Joseph Spotted Eagle examined the Mustang with reverent hands, tracing the marking gently. "This horse carries the medicine line," he explained to Joey. "Very rare now. Our stories say these horses were messengers between worlds, carrying wisdom when most needed." As Joey listened to the ancient stories, he felt pieces of Esperanza's history, and perhaps his own, falling into place like a complex puzzle, finally revealing its pattern. That evening, while helping his uncle clean out the storage shed, Joey discovered a small wooden box he had never seen before. Inside lay items that had been recovered from his parents' car after the accident: his mother's rosary, his father's wallet, and a small stone carving of a horse. "Your mother always carried this," Miguel explained, placing the carving in Joey's palm. "Said it protected travelers. It was a gift from your grandmother when your parents first came north." Joey stared at the small figure, its details worn smooth from years of being held. The connection to his past, to his heritage, felt suddenly tangible in a way it hadn't before. During an interview for a documentary about the center, the reporter casually asked, "How would you respond to accusations that this method only works with you and Esperanza because of unique circumstances?" And before Joey could answer, Chuck Daniels, the famous traditional trainer, interrupted with a public challenge. "How about proving your method with the most difficult horse I can find in a live event, kid?" Joey stared at Chuck Daniels, the famous trainer's challenge hanging in the air between them like a thundercloud. The documentary crew's cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of the unexpected confrontation. The reporter looked from Joey to Daniels and back again, clearly delighted by this dramatic turn in what had been a routine interview. "Well?" Daniels pressed, adjusting his championship belt buckle with a self-satisfied smirk. "You've been making quite a name for yourself with that one special horse. But real horsemen know that doesn't prove anything." Joey's throat went dry. He had been prepared to discuss his methods, to explain the science and psychology behind his approach, but not to defend it in what was clearly meant to be a public spectacle. Behind him, Esperanza shifted restlessly, sensing the tension radiating from his human partner. "This isn't about proving anything," Joey said quietly. "It's about helping traumatized horses heal." Daniels laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Healing? These are livestock, boy, not therapy patients." He turned to address the camera directly. "I'm offering a simple challenge. I'll bring the most difficult horse I can find, not some cherry-picked animal that responds well to coddling. We'll both work with our methods, side by side, and let people see which approach really works." The reporter's eyes gleamed with excitement. "That sounds like compelling television, Mr. Daniels. Joey, would you consider accepting such a challenge?" Joey hesitated, his mind racing. Every instinct told him to refuse, to explain that traumatized horses weren't props for entertainment, that real rehabilitation took time and patience, not a made-for-TV showdown. But another part of him recognized the opportunity this represented. How many horse owners would see this? How many minds might be changed if he could demonstrate that there was another way? "I need to think about it," Joey finally said. "This isn't something I can decide right now." The documentary crew packed up soon after, but news of Daniel's challenge spread through Willow Creek like wildfire. By evening, Joey's phone wouldn't stop buzzing with messages from friends, students, and even strangers weighing in on whether he should accept. Later that night, Joey sat with Lily Johnson and Blake Thompson in the center's small office, the three of them processing the implications of what had happened. "It's a trap," Lily warned, pacing the small space. "Daniels didn't get to where he is by being stupid. He'll bring a horse specifically chosen to make your methods look ineffective." Thompson leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "Maybe. Or maybe he'll bring exactly what he promised. The most difficult horse he can find. Either way, the question is whether we can afford to turn down this kind of publicity." "This isn't about publicity," Joey protested. "It's about these horses, about showing people there's a better way to connect with them." "And how many people will see that if you refuse the challenge?" Thompson countered. "Daniels will claim you backed down because you know your methods only work in controlled environments with specially selected horses." Joey turned to stare out the window at the paddock where Esperanza grazed peacefully in the moonlight. The Mustang had come so far from the terrified, aggressive animal everyone had written off as dangerous. But that transformation had taken weeks of patient, consistent work, not the kind of quick results Daniel's spectacle would demand. "If I do this," Joey said slowly, "it has to be on terms that are fair to the horse. No arbitrary deadlines, no forcing results for the cameras." Thompson nodded. "I might have some leverage there. Daniels wants to use my property for this event. Says it adds credibility since I've publicly supported your methods. I can set conditions." The news spread rapidly across regional media. The Montana Standard ran a front-page story framing the upcoming event as "Tradition versus Innovation in Horse Training." Social media buzzed with opinions, many dividing along generational lines. Older ranchers defending traditional methods, younger riders expressing curiosity about Joey's approach. As preparations began, the challenge evolved into something larger than Joey had anticipated. Thompson, seeing the commercial potential, had invited horse owners and trainers from 3 states. A local brewery sponsored a hospitality tent. Vendors requested spaces to sell equipment and food. "This isn't what I wanted," Joey confided to Lily 3 days before the event. "It's turning into a circus." "Sometimes you need to play the game to change the rules," Thompson told him when Joey raised his concerns. "All these people coming to watch, they're the ones who need to see what you do, not just Daniels." The day before the event, a large trailer arrived bearing Destroyer, the horse Daniels had selected for Joey. The animal's reputation preceded him. A 7-year-old buckskin gelding with a history of injuring 6 different handlers, the last so severely the man had required reconstructive surgery on his face. Joey watched from a distance as 4 men struggled to unload the massive horse. Destroyer lived up to his name immediately, kicking the trailer walls and lunging at anyone who came near. His eyes rolled wildly, showing whites all around, and his muscular body bore the scars of numerous battles with humans. "Jesus," muttered Frank, standing beside Joey. Daniels wasn't kidding about finding the most difficult horse. Joey studied Destroyer's movements carefully, noting how the horse responded to specific stimuli. The animal wasn't simply aggressive. He was in a constant state of hypervigilance, reacting to threats only he could perceive. His aggression wasn't random but predictable if you understood the triggers. "Can you see what happened to him?" Joey asked Frank quietly. The old cowboy nodded. "Spurs, harsh bits, probably a twisted wire noseband from the scarring. Someone tried to break him the old way and created a monster instead." That evening, Joey requested something that surprised everyone. He wanted to simply sit near Destroyer's paddock, at a safe distance for several hours. No attempts at contact, no training equipment, just quiet observation. "What exactly are you doing?" Daniels asked when he arrived to check on his chosen challenger, finding Joey sitting cross-legged on the ground about 30 feet from the paddock fence. "Learning his language," Joey replied simply. Daniels snorted. "Horse language is simple. They respect strength and consistency. Everything else is just people projecting their feelings onto animals." As Daniels walked away, Joey returned his attention to Destroyer. The buckskin paced relentlessly, stopping occasionally to stare at Joey with what most would interpret as aggression but what Joey recognized as assessment. The horse wasn't just angry. He was calculating, constantly evaluating potential threats and escape routes. After sunset, when most people had left for the evening, Joey set up a small Bluetooth speaker near the paddock. Soft classical music, the same Bach cello suites that had helped calm Esperanza, drifted through the night air. Destroyer initially startled at the new sound, then gradually settled into a less frantic pacing pattern as the gentle notes continued. Joey stayed until midnight, simply watching, listening, and occasionally making notes in his journal. When he finally rose to leave, Destroyer stopped his pacing to observe Joey's departure, a small but significant shift in attention. Back in his room at his uncle's ranch, Joey couldn't sleep. Doubt crept in as he stared at the ceiling, wondering if he had made a terrible mistake accepting this challenge. What if he failed? What if his methods didn't work quickly enough for the spectacle everyone expected? Worse, what if his failure discredited the entire approach, hurting the prospects of other traumatized horses? The morning of the challenge dawned clear and cool, the kind of perfect autumn day that showcased Montana's beauty. By 9 o'clock, vehicles lined the long driveway to Thompson's ranch, and a crowd had begun to gather around the 2 adjacent round pens that had been set up for the demonstration. Joey arrived early, bypassing the growing audience to check on Destroyer. The horse appeared even more agitated than the previous day, likely disturbed by the unusual activity and unfamiliar voices. Joey watched as Daniels inspected his chosen equipment for the demonstration: spurs, a severe curb bit, and a riding crop. "You're up first," Daniels informed Joey with a confident smile. 30 minutes to show what you can do. Then I'll demonstrate how a professional handles a problem horse." The contrast in their approaches couldn't have been more stark. While Daniels had assembled an arsenal of control devices, Joey carried only a small bag containing apple slices and the portable speaker. No halter, no lead rope, no whip. By 10 o'clock, nearly 300 people had gathered, forming a semicircle around the demonstration area. Thompson stepped forward to address the crowd, explaining the format. Joey would have the first 30 minutes with Destroyer, followed by Daniels with another difficult horse. The audience would witness both approaches side by side. As Joey stepped toward the round pen where Destroyer had been placed, he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to find his Uncle Miguel standing there, his expression solemn. "Remember what your grandfather used to say," Miguel said softly. "El caballo sabe quién eres antes de que digas una palabra." The horse knows who you are before you say a word. Joey nodded, drawing strength from the unexpected connection to his heritage. As he entered the observation area outside the round pen, a hush fell over the crowd. Destroyer stood at the far side of the enclosure, head high, nostrils flared, every muscle tensed for fight or flight. "Your 30 minutes starts now," Thompson announced. To everyone's surprise, Joey didn't immediately enter the round pen. Instead, he sat down on a stool just outside it, closed his eyes, and took several deep breaths. The crowd shifted restlessly, confused by this apparent inaction. "Is he going to do anything?" someone called out. Joey opened his eyes and focused entirely on Destroyer, ignoring the crowd and their expectations. He began to speak softly, not attempting to move closer, simply establishing his presence in a non-threatening way. "I see you," he said quietly. "I see your fear. I see your pain." For several minutes, this continued, Joey simply talking in a gentle, consistent tone while Destroyer paced nervously. Gradually, the horse's circuits of the pen became less frantic. His ears, previously pinned flat against his head, occasionally flicked forward to catch Joey's voice. After about 10 minutes, Joey finally entered the round pen, moving slowly and deliberately. He didn't approach Destroyer directly, but positioned himself in the center, turning his body slightly away from the horse, a posture that in equine body language communicated lack of threat. Daniels watched from the sidelines, arms crossed, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Not much of a demonstration so far," he commented loudly enough for nearby spectators to hear. Joey continued as if he hadn't heard, focusing completely on the subtle shifts in Destroyer's behavior, the slight lowering of his head, the decreasing tension in his shoulders, the more regular breathing pattern. These were the small victories that most observers wouldn't notice, but that signaled the beginning of trust. 20 minutes into the demonstration, Joey had yet to touch Destroyer or even approach him directly. The crowd was growing restless, many clearly disappointed by the lack of dramatic action they had expected. "Is this all we're going to see?" someone called out. "The horse is just standing there now." "That's exactly the point," Joey responded, addressing the crowd for the first time. "Look at his eyes. When he arrived, you could see the whites all around. Extreme fear. Now look again." The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. Destroyer stood quietly at the edge of the round pen, his eyes softer, his breathing regular. He wasn't approaching Joey, but he had stopped treating him as an imminent threat. "This is just the beginning," Joey explained. "Real healing takes time, patience, and respect for what the horse is telling us. I'm not here to break his spirit or force him to submit. I'm here to build a foundation of trust." As his 30 minutes drew to a close, Joey did something that caused gasps from the audience. He turned his back completely to Destroyer and sat down in the center of the round pen, making himself entirely vulnerable to an animal known for attacking humans. While Destroyer advanced threateningly in his direction, Joey remained motionless in the center of the arena, breathing deeply and remembering the advice of the Crow Elder. "Horses don't respond to what you do, but to who you are." And suddenly, as if sensing something different in this human, the fierce gelding stopped a few yards from Joey, snorting and studying the boy with eyes that no longer conveyed only anger, but a cautious curiosity. The crowd held its collective breath as Destroyer stood motionless, studying Joey with intense focus. The massive buckskin's nostrils flared, processing the boy's scent, while his ears swiveled forward in a gesture of cautious interest rather than the pinned-back threat they had displayed earlier. For several heartbeats, human and horse remained locked in silent communication, each assessing the other on a level far deeper than words could express. In the adjacent arena, Chuck Daniels had already begun his demonstration with the second horse, a gray gelding with a similar reputation for aggression. The contrast between the two approaches was stark and immediate. While Joey sat quietly, allowing Destroyer to make his own choices, Daniels had entered his arena with commanding presence, immediately asserting dominance with a whip cracking in the air. "Control is established from the first moment," Daniels narrated to the crowd, many of whom had shifted their attention to his more dynamic display. "The horse needs to understand who's in charge." Joey remained focused entirely on Destroyer, ignoring Daniels' running commentary. He observed how the buckskin's breathing had steadied, how the tense muscles along his neck had begun to soften. These subtle signs were invisible to most spectators, but spoke volumes about the internal shift happening within the traumatized animal. "He's not doing anything," a spectator muttered, loud enough for others to hear. "The other guy's already got his horse moving." Lily Johnson, standing at the edge of the viewing area, stepped forward. "What you're witnessing in Joey's arena is equally important, but less obvious," she explained. "Notice the horse's eye, no longer showing white all around. His breathing has regulated. His muscles are relaxing. These are the first steps in rebuilding trust with an animal that's known only fear and pain in human interactions." As if to confirm her words, Destroyer took a tentative step forward, then another, gradually closing the distance between himself and Joey. The boy remained perfectly still, his breathing deep and even, his posture open and non-threatening. When the horse was just a few feet away, Joey slowly raised his hand, palm up, not reaching toward the animal but offering connection if Destroyer chose to accept it. The entire arena fell silent as Destroyer extended his muzzle, nostrils wide, taking in Joey's scent from this closer proximity. After what seemed an eternity, the horse's soft lips touched Joey's palm, the lightest contact, there and gone in an instant, but unmistakable. A collective gasp rose from the crowd, followed by scattered applause. In contrast, Daniels had his gray gelding trotting in tight circles, responding to commands but showing clear signs of stress. Tail clamped down, mouth tight against the severe bit, sweat breaking out across his shoulders despite the cool morning air. "See how quickly he's learned respect?" Daniels called out. "That's what clear leadership accomplishes." Joey finally spoke, his voice carrying across both arenas. "What I'm seeing isn't respect," he said quietly. "It's fear. There's a critical difference." For the remainder of his demonstration, Joey continued his patient approach with Destroyer. By the end of the allotted time, the buckskin was willingly following Joey around the pen without any halter or lead rope, not from exhaustion or submission, but from genuine curiosity and emerging trust. What we've witnessed today isn't the end of a process, but the beginning, Joey explained to the crowd as his session concluded. Real healing can't be rushed for the sake of a demonstration. It happens on the horse's timeline, not ours. Daniels, having concluded his demonstration by mounting and riding the gray gelding, which submitted but showed clear signs of distress, approached Joey as the formal portion of the event ended. "Impressive parlor tricks," the older trainer said, his voice tight with poorly concealed irritation. "But in the real world, horse owners need results, not philosophy." Joey looked directly at Daniels, noting the defensive posture, the tight grip on his training whip. "The results speak for themselves," he replied quietly. "Your horse is obeying you, but he's shut down inside. Destroyer is beginning to open up, to choose connection rather than just avoid punishment." As the crowd dispersed, many lingered near Joey's arena, watching as he continued to sit quietly with Destroyer, occasionally offering a gentle word or gesture, but never demanding the horse's attention. Several approached with questions, their genuine curiosity suggesting that minds were opening, if not yet changed. Among them was a rancher from Wyoming, his weathered face thoughtful as he leaned on the fence. "My grandfather trained horses for 60 years using traditional methods," he said to Joey. "Never questioned it until today. That moment when that monster of a horse chose to come to you." He shook his head in wonder. "Made me think maybe we've been missing something all these years." Throughout the afternoon, as the event transitioned to a more casual gathering, university representatives circulated among the attendees. Professor Alan Davidson from Montana State's Equine Studies program spent nearly an hour observing Joey's continuing work with Destroyer. "What we're seeing here isn't just an alternative training method," he explained to a group of interested spectators. "It's a fundamental shift in how we understand horse psychology and interspecies communication. My department would like to document this process academically." By evening, as the crowd thinned, Joey remained with Destroyer, the buckskin now comfortable enough to graze nearby, while Joey sat reading aloud from a book on equine behavior. The transformation in just one day was remarkable, not a complete rehabilitation, but a foundation laid where most would have deemed it impossible. Blake Thompson approached as sunset painted the mountains gold and purple. "Daniels left about an hour ago," he informed Joey. "Didn't much like how the crowd responded to your demonstration." Joey looked up from his book. How did they respond? Thompson's weathered face broke into a rare smile. "They were asking a lot of questions, good ones, about how your methods might work with their own horses, about the science behind it. The university folks were swarmed with inquiries about research and training programs." As night fell, Joey reluctantly prepared to leave Destroyer for the evening. "I'll be back in the morning," he promised the horse, who watched him with eyes now soft and attentive rather than wild with fear. "This is just the beginning for you." 3 days after the challenge, the regional impact was evident. Local newspapers carried front-page stories with headlines like "Teen Trainer Revolutionizes Horse Rehabilitation" and "Traditional Methods Challenged by Willow Creek Prodigy." The Montana Standard ran an editorial questioning the ethics of traditional breaking methods in light of Joey's demonstration. More significantly, the Thompson Horse Rehabilitation Center's phone rang constantly with inquiries. Horse owners seeking help with troubled animals, students wanting to learn Joey's methods, even traditional trainers curious about incorporating some of his techniques. At a meeting in the center's office, Lily shared exciting news. "Montana State University has officially offered to partner with us. They want to establish a research program focused on trauma-informed equine rehabilitation, with you as a central consultant, Joey." "Me?" Joey's eyes widened. "But I'm just a natural innovator who's challenging century-old practices with demonstrable results," Lily finished for him. "They're offering a full scholarship when you graduate, with the opportunity to develop this program as part of your studies." Thompson, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during the meeting, finally spoke. "I've been in this business my entire life, trained horses the way my father trained them, never questioning if there might be a better way." He looked directly at Joey. "You've taught this old cowboy something important, and I think we're just scratching the surface." The following weekend, Joey brought Destroyer to meet Esperanza for the first time. The introduction was carefully managed in the center's largest paddock, with both horses given plenty of space to establish boundaries. To everyone's surprise, Esperanza immediately assumed a protective, almost mentoring role with the traumatized buckskin. "He's showing him the ropes," Joey explained to his student volunteers, who watched in fascination, "demonstrating that this place is safe, that humans here can be trusted." The sight of the two formerly dangerous horses grazing peacefully side by side became a powerful visual metaphor for the center's work and for Joey's growing methodology of healing through connection rather than control. As the program expanded, Joey insisted on renaming Destroyer. "Names shape destiny," he explained during a session observed by university researchers. "We're going to call him Valor now, honoring his courage in surviving what he's been through and finding the bravery to trust again." The ceremony to rename the horse became an unexpected media event, with photographers capturing the moment Joey painted a symbol of courage, derived from Crow tribal traditions, on Valor's shoulder. The images appeared in equestrian magazines nationwide, further spreading awareness of the center's revolutionary approach. By spring, the Thompson Horse Rehabilitation Center had evolved into something far more significant than anyone had initially imagined. A purpose-built educational facility had been added, where regular workshops attracted participants from across the country. 5 additional rescued horses with severe trauma histories were in various stages of rehabilitation, each working with teams that included both experienced handlers and at-risk youth from local communities. "We're healing horses and people together," Joey explained to a documentary crew that had returned to film the center's progress. "The connection goes both ways." The most profound transformation, however, was in Blake Thompson himself. The rancher who had once seen horses purely as commodities now spoke passionately about the ethical treatment of animals and the responsibility of human stewards. "I spent my life thinking value meant how much money something could generate," Thompson admitted during an interview. "These kids and these horses have taught me differently." On a warm afternoon 3 years later, Joey, now a 19-year-old university student and the center's director, led a group of riders into the hills surrounding Willow Creek. The diverse group included Native American teenagers from the reservation, Latino youth from newly established community outreach programs, and local kids who had once been considered troublemakers. Each rode bareback on horses that had once been deemed irredeemable by traditional standards. Their equipment was minimal, just simple cordage halters, many adorned with beadwork or woven patterns representing the cultural heritage of their riders. At the head of the group rode Joey on Esperanza, the powerful black Mustang moving with fluid grace beneath him. No saddle, no bit, no spurs, just the profound connection between horse and human that had started their shared journey. When they reached the summit of a grassy hill overlooking the valley, Joey signaled the group to halt. In the distance, a small band of wild Mustangs grazed peacefully, unaware of the watching humans. Esperanza's ears pricked forward, his attention fixed on the distant herd. A soft nickering sound emanated from his throat, not a call of distress or longing, but something more like acknowledgement, one free spirit recognizing another. Joey leaned forward to stroke the scars on Esperanza's neck, marks that would never fully vanish but had ceased to define him. As he gazed across the valley at the free-running Mustangs, then back at the circle of young riders on their once broken horses, he felt the completion of a circle that had begun that day at the auction 3 years ago. "We are free now, friend," he whispered to Esperanza. "And better still, we've helped others find their freedom too."